to the symposium, to the PSU-RMIT Cybersecurity Symposium 2021. So we have a lot of people joining us from different regions. I would like to say good evening for our people in the US, for the speakers, and good morning for the people in Thailand, and also good afternoon for the Australian audience. Thank you very much. So this is a great event from people, from experts in the industry, talking about the different cybersecurity issues. And this symposium is organized by two universities, the PSU, which is in Thailand, and the RMIT. Jacopal, next slide. So before we start, it's really important for the people who are joining us from overseas to have an acknowledgement of the country, to acknowledge the owners of this land. You know, where we're sitting in Australia, the Aboriginal people, it's really important. They have been the owner for over 60,000 years. And more recently, I think there are studies saying they have been here over 80,000. So it's really important for us. So RMIT acknowledges the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which the university stands. RMIT University respectively recognizes the elders, both past and present. Next. So as I said before, this symposium is really a unique opportunity for all of you to understand really the challenges of the cybersecurity challenges. It's organized by the College of Computing from PSU, Prince of Sangla University in Phuket. And this college has basically runs different programs, and these are quite important programs, the computing one and the digital engineering, and they're also running the Masters of Computing and Data Science and the PhD. And we have an agreement between PSU and RMIT, and some of the PhD students from PSU are doing research with us as well. So we have quite a few collaborations with PSU, and these are the research teams within PSU. They are really very active in AI, whether they applied into the intelligent tourism or for the Internet of Things. They have also a very active research group in blockchain and the digital media. Next. So these are the key people in the board of directors of the College of Computing. We have the dean, Aziz, and we have the associate dean academic affairs, Adisak, and we have the associate dean for research, Waradum. I would like to thank. He is a person who is really behind all this symposium, has done a lot of work, and I would like to particularly thank him. And also the Associate Dean for Special Affairs and International Relationship is Dr. Natam Pong. So as I mentioned before, so this symposium is organized between PSU, Thailand, and RMIT. RMIT is an Australian university, which is located in Melbourne. And it's one of the leading university, and it has different campuses. So it's a global university. So the main campus is in Melbourne, but we have also a lot of campuses as well. One in Barcelona with Europe, and they do a lot of research, and they're involved with a lot of European projects, very active in European projects. And we have also another campus, which is quite substantial, which are running our programs, and which is the one in Hanoi. It's quite a substantial one, and RMIT, I think, have been in Vietnam for the last 20 years or over that. And we have finally the one in Singapore. Next. So within RMIT, we have the famous Research Center for Cybersecurity, which is a very strong cybersecurity center. And the advantage of this one of this research center is really to bring together expertise from a different domain, from a computational area to the mathematics, to engineering and to business, to look at really the cybersecurity challenges, right? So we look. So the center addressing technological aspect, human and organizational, as you can see it. Next. And we have the key people in the cybersecurity, and of course, Professor Matt Warren is the director, with Deputy Lac Condilias, and myself as a research director. So, and HIP is the representative of Vietnam Hub of the Cybersecurity Center. So as I said before, we are looking a lot in terms at the different aspects of cybersecurity, from cryptography to anomaly detection and so on. But we also work a lot of closely with the industry. So we have a lot of funding from industry, from typically SMEs, and also from government regarding cyber skills, and also the typical critical infrastructure and so on. So we are looking at, as I said before, at different aspects of cybersecurity. Next. There's another center which is really, which is quite a substantial center, which is a hub, which is slightly bigger than the center, which is the Space Industry Center. It's also within the engineering school, and it looks at really a space issue. And cybersecurity is really, and the cyber aspects are really critical for that. So we are working closely in this area, and I'm one of the program managers in that space. Next. So let's go back to the important thing, and I would like to thank all the speakers. We have you have a list here of great speakers, and you have a timetable here on the left, but it's unfortunately neither the US time, neither Australia time, but it's a tight time. So we have here the speakers. We have 4 excellent speakers, and please feel free to ask questions. We'll have each speaker 40 minutes. And we'll have around 5 to 10 minutes questions, and please post them in the chat. So we'll try to answer some. We'll try to get speakers to answer some questions, but if you can't, so the speakers will try to reply in the chat room or in other ways. So I'm very happy to introduce the first speaker, who is Ingy, and as it's highlighted here, I don't need to read everything. So her title is already self-explanatory, but SelfSovereign Identities. And really, Ingy is a great expert in cybersecurity. She works with J. Morgan Chase, and you can see she is an expert in security, in threat modeling, and she earned a PhD in cryptography. So we do a lot of summarization already on the fly, right? So everything is highlighted. So it's great to have you here, Ingy. Thank you very much for accepting. And now it's for you. I will switch off my camera. So now it's for you.
Thank you, Zahir. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here in a second. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, great. So yes, thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited to be with you. And
sorry,
yeah.
It looks like you're sharing the first screen, not the second one.
Oh, okay. Give me a second here to try to fix that. Okay.
That's one. Use the principle.
Yeah, I'll just put that here. And slideshow. Okay, is that better? It's still.
No, we only see your camera.
Okay. I'll try to share again. Okay, so share content. I'm just gonna do that one. And okay, does that work?
Now perfect.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Okay, great. So yeah, so excited to be with you guys today. And today I wanted to talk to you about self-sovereign identities in our current modern world, where everything is connected, everything is talking together. And I'm so glad to be with you here. I'm Ingy Youssef, as Ahar introduced me, and I'm the head of integration security at JP Morgan Chase. So let's talk about identities, your internet identity and every other identity on the internet. And if you were really wondering, okay, so yeah, identity, digital identity, what is it? What is that all about? Like, is that really that important? What are the issues around it? I will tell you that. Well, if you take a look at some of the data that's on the slide here, a ton of the current events related to breaches or issues, data leakage, mostly will have some what we call PII, or personally identifiable information, including passwords, credentials, and things like that. And you know what? This costs a lot, and it has a cost in the black market, which tells you just how much this rising cost of these secrets are going up. And really, I wanted to put that first to say, from a risk perspective, how your digital identity, it just brings value. And you know what? We have an issue with that. And the issue is, it's a very weird thing. And honestly, if you think about it, you might never think like, oh, how is that? So the internet, when it was created, it actually was created for computers to talk together. This TCP/IP thing is for machines to talk together. But guess what? There's no real identity layer that is standardized across the whole of the internet. And this has created tons of problems, because there are, those malicious attackers out there that are also trying to disguise their identity and just creep in and use it for malicious purposes. And so really there's always this trade-off, right, for risk and compliance and things. But your digital identity brings more than that. There's also business opportunities related to digital identity. And when we're talking about, customer experiences as they're using their digital identity to use services or engage in activities, and we need to really balance this thing, because sometimes they don't necessarily go together. But you know what? As a basis of both, when complexity is there, both of these two sides suffer. So I would say there is definitely a lot of opportunity for digital identity. And if you think about it a little bit, probably you've heard the word digital transformation. And when COVID hit us, this is where every one of us across their different sectors, be it healthcare, be it financial, be it commerce, it doesn't matter. We all just realize the importance of providing digital services. And so really what we are saying here is, you know what, you cannot do digital transformations, you cannot do digital services without a solid digital identity. And so that takes me to really starting us here around the evolution of digital identity. Yes, indeed, it's an evolution. It's been us just trying to fix what has not been planned correctly at the beginning when the internet was created. So the idea here is that it really started with what I would call centralized identities or I would actually prefer to say it's siloed identities. And what that means is really there is a user who wants to interact with multiple applications, but in each of those applications, they have their identified account as a representation of their digital identity, as if they are really having multiple issued identities for each of those applications in a one-to-one relationship, just like as you can see in the diagram here. So moving on from centralized, it comes into what you've probably heard about as federated, right? So the federated, it means that, okay, cool. Now I can have an identity issued, and then I can use this identity across multiple applications. And this model started to provide an ability to really scale this thing, but we were still tied to this thing called issuer of the identity. Think about all the complexities to try to get the data there. And now the self-sovereign identity, this era where we're trying to say, no, get the issuer out of the way. It's the user in the center and its interaction with both the issuers as well as the applications. So this journey that we just saw is really changing the way authentication, authorization is being done. And it does have multiple ripple effects for all the identity access management primitives. But the whole idea is that now, in order to be able to authenticate a user and know who they are, and then to authorize them and know what they are allowed to access, instead of just going from the centralized, very well-known username and password, you have the ability now to do a login with Facebook, login with Google, login with the federated model, and you have your identity in a certain place with what we call identity provider, and then it's just the identity information is shared through this trusted party, which is the identity provider, all the way to the concept of a digital wallet for self-sovereign. So all this plays in the authentication authorization primitive supporting the identity management framework. Speaking about frameworks, I brought for you here a criteria framework that I like to use, and I've included some of the links down there. It really tries to see from an authentication perspective how the different progression of digital identity really measure against each other. So think from a usability perspective. So from a user experience, think from deployability, the complexity of implementation, security and privacy, and definitely the different things related to that. And can you notice the theme? It's the same. We're trying to say, literally, a good framework is one that can balance both the customer experience and the user experience and the customer needs with the risks and the opportunities there. And so using this model just to show you as we go into really take a quick look at centralized versus the federated approach to identity management. And as you can see here, you will see that, for example, for the federated, it might be heavy in the deployability, but definitely it's winning. It's taking an edge in security and privacy, providing better in the usability. So you can see how they compare together. But I will tell you that central to both of them, federated or centralized, there is something sitting in the middle between a user and a verifier of identity, and that is the issuer of the identity, or what we call the identity provider. And so things like that are related to credentials, and don't tell me passwordless. Passwordless is a different thing. I'm not going to bring it in right now, but I just want you to keep this aside for now. But all this credential-related stuff are resilient to phishing. We have an issue of verifier for impersonation, and basically, if the verifier, someone is impersonating it, and the consequences for stealing the credentials and all these things. So I'm going to take you from there to explore one specific protocol for federation, which is OpenID Connect, so Authentication Federation. And OpenID Connect is a little bit of an improvement. You might say improvement in what? So you're talking about centralized and federated identity. Yes, of course. But then, you know what? In all the models that I've talked about before, central to it was that the user has no say. They log in and they don't have any say in what gets shared about them. Like nothing. How is that going to be used? Like nothing. But OpenID Connect introduces a different model, which is what we call user-centric identity. Coming close to self-sovereign right now, we're starting to look at the user as an owner that should be asked, even though they don't really own their digital identity. It's sitting in the identity provider. They don't own it, but still, at least they get to provide a consent on what they gets to be shared about them. So look at that. Look at step number 7 here. So if I would compare, one of the very well-known federation protocols, SAML, to OpenID Connect, which is making this pivot to user-centric identities, right? You would say that okay, during this dance of okay, the user authenticates, wants to access a service, the client that's being used, take them to redirects the browser to the identity provider, and you're faced with a login screen, and there they basically allow they do the login, provide credentials, but step 7, do you see here? Provide consent. Are you okay with sharing these based on scopes? So that was a bit of an improvement, right? At least we're asking the user. So that's an improvement. Now, but now let's go to the fun stuff. Moving from centralized and federated to decentralized identities. So no wonder why they call it self-sovereign. So sovereign is coming in from this like king, owner, like a very majestic and ruler, right? So it's really the users put in that space. If you look at the model of centralized and federated, there's always this relation between the issuer and the verifier. The verifier cannot really verify your identity without tagging the issuer. It's just not possible. That's the model where you have to have this infrastructures of identity providers, you have to have them online, acting, and ready. And not only that, you have no control. If their policies are bad, for security, your information will be leaked. You have no control. If they decide to share your information, you have no control. But look at this. As you go to self-sovereign model, the user is in the center, and the user is basically providing, doing their interactions between the verifiers, issuers, and also the registration, what we call like identity registry. And so let's explore more. Let's explore more about really the quest to decentralize the web of trust. So, so all what we're talking about is based on this extremely powerful public key infrastructure, right? We love PKI. We have no issues with PKI. But the problem is that basically it's assume you have 2 entities, Alice and Bob. And of course, if you probably you're very familiar, like if you've been working in any of the security cryptography in these areas, Alice and Bob just, live with us forever. And Alice and Bob are here for you as well. So Alice and Bob, Alice wants to share a secret with Bob, right? Currently, they need to exchange some public keys, right? And the way currently the public keys are acknowledged is through certificates, and certificates are signed by what we call certificate authorities. And the way we trust certificate authority is this centralized web of trust, where there is a certain set of root certs and then intermediaries and stuff like that. And it has a very complex way how this is managed. But also it's more like a client-server model. But now as you start going on to peer-to-peer, you have an issue. So what happens usually is that Alice goes on and wants to send the secret, it signs it with its private key, and then it encrypts the whole thing with the public key of Bob, and so on. Bob receives it, decrypted, validates the identity of Alice, we're all good, that's the secret, we're gonna use it. Now in decentralized PKI, when we're trying to decentralize the web of trust, look at this, look at the first one on the top. What's happening here is that Alice and Bob are really putting those public keys in the public ledger. I'm not going to say blockchain right now. I'm going to get it in a minute, but it's a distributed ledger. It's a public registry. Okay, it's like a big phone book. And so they register basically this public key there, and it is associated with something what's called a distributed identity. Now, they then, you know what? Bob just basically sends Alice their DID, right? They send it its identity, and Alice does not need to do anything except just basically fetch the public key of Bob from the distributed ledger or the registry. And then it does the same steps that we talked about before. And what about Bob? It will also use Alice's did and use the public key of it that's also stored in the ledger. So what is really self-sovereign then? Oh, it's your wallet. It just works in the same way. Just naturally, whenever we are using any of our credentials, we don't have entities or people taking our stuff and providing it to merchants or things, and we are just sitting and watching. No, we hold our identities in our wallets, we get it out, we do a transaction, and the identities itself are issued by trusted issuers. And so there are many benefits of self-sovereign identity, many different benefits to the model that I just shared. But here I'm going to just focus more on the pieces that are related to the business and related to the user experience and the costs, which are not usually, we always think from a risk perspective, right? But I want to bring to your attention that there is more to that. There is benefit also to the organizations that goes beyond just mitigating risks because of bad identity handling. So look at that. So first of all, from a cost perspective, of course, well, I'm going to squeeze risk anyways. Fraud reduction, come on. Okay. So since now there is a way that cannot be changed, this concept of a registry that registers those identifiers and public keys cannot be changed, cannot be modified. So it really reduces fraud. But also, look at this. In order to onboard a new identity, a customer, now the cost is significantly reduced because you don't need to onboard to an identity provider and make them wait weeks and months, and for some cases years, sometimes to finish up all the integrations and the difficulties, right? You definitely have reduced customer service costs. It's all, again, it's very owned by the user. And there's even, in some cases, they say, well, you can even companies can benefit from acting as a credential issuer. And that's another piece. But from a user experience, from an efficiency of doing the job, workflow automation, authentication and authorization now includes no passwords that people key in. It's literally just a click of a button in their application where it happens automatically behind the scene. And we're going to see this in a minute. But you have also an ability to do delegation and guardianship, and this is used a lot, in some of the medical field and stuff like this, and many other more benefits. And not to mention all the compliance. I haven't even talked about compliance. Compliance is a huge thing because now you don't need to store people's data in an identity provider and look on all the policies that you need to abide by, right? So how does it work? So really, as we said before, it's the relationship exactly between, there's no identity provider in the middle. So it's as if what we call peer-to-peer interaction. There is no hierarchical stuff. There's just peer-to-peer, and the one that guarantees this integrity of the interaction is a distributed ledger. Again, I'm just going to push the blockchain a little bit, but think about it as a distributed store, and blockchain is a way to do it. So we're going to come to this in a minute. But really the peer-to-peer now is, instead of this older models where you had to create an account, your digital identity existed within each of the orgs, or the identity provider was one that we saw. So at the high level, it really is a holder that acquires and stores and presents their own credentials, right? Their own identities and proofs and stuff. And usually these are associated with an issuer, and verifiers are there to stay, no problem. But as you can see, there is no direct relation at all between the issuer and the verifier. Instead, everything goes through what's called the verifiable data registry. And that's it. that's really how it goes. There's always a challenge, there's a response, and there's a resolver which resolves, if that is, really a valid did, and does what is the public key that corresponds to it. So here's an example, and it's a university example. Shout out, of course, to PSU and our RMIT. Assume that we have an example where you have fresh graduates, and your fresh graduates are issued a credential, say a bachelor degree, right? Saying that, well, you are now a graduated bachelor degree. Or a master's or PhD, whatever you choose. And then at the same time, the credential holder, the fresh graduate, wants to use this in order to apply for work and use this and provide it for the future employer. Assume also that in that ecosystem, the university has support for this framework as well as the employer, and they are all depending on a public distributed ledger, as you can see. So let's see what happens. So Alice is freshly graduated, super excited, and she went to the university desk, and then the employee gave her a QR code. And then basically she scans this with her wallet application, the digital wallet application, with her mobile app scanning, and then what happens is the connection is established. What we call peer-did relationship is established, and then basically the university pushes the credential that is proving that she has got her bachelor's. Now, of course, the digital wallet will say, okay, would you accept this credential? She says, yeah, absolutely. Yay, yes, I'm graduated. And then she goes in, and then she goes to Company X. And also similarly, through this QR code things, as simple as scanning a QR code, they establish the peer-did, the distributed identity relationship. And when I say the word established did, I'm just basically referring to exchanging of the distributed identifier. And notice that in the ledger, do you see this ledger down there? In the ledger does not store any credentials. The ledger does not store anything except just the distributed identifier, and then any additional information on like the public key related to it, as the schema, some metadata, but nothing more. Cool? All public information. So then she basically establishes the relation, and then tries to apply. And in one of the steps, you have to have this to show that you have a bachelor's degree. And then she provides the proof. She provides a proof that she actually, indeed, her digital wallet does have a credential from the university that she has graduated. And with that, as you can see, Company X has never ever tried to contact the university at all. All what Company X is actually going to do is that it's going to use the ledger in order to get the public did of the university, get the public key, and then validate the credential and say, voila, yeah, that's a valid credential issued from PSU or RMIT. So just so that you know, the basic difference here is that now this employee does not have to, go back and fetch where she has put her 20 years ago bachelor's certificate to take a picture and upload it, which really, believe me, situations like this do happen, this solves it. It's like magic, right? So you might wonder, okay, so what about OpenID Connect? You mentioned OpenID Connect is a federation protocol, and then we're basically talking about how we would integrate with this SSI thing that you're talking about. Because, well, are we going to throw away our identity provider or something? No. It's not happening. So you're going to need to be able to integrate with it, right? So yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. And as you can see here, what's going to happen is that the identity holder have their digital wallet. There will be a secure communication established. And the secure communication, by the way, it can be like just over HTTPS, or there is something else which is secure messaging based on a protocol called JVM, basically what we call DIDCOM. I know I'm throwing lots of jargon there, but that's not important. The most important is there's a secure channel, okay, for exchanging those distributed identifiers. And so what's happening is the identity holder really talks to, wants to access the resources there. And so, you know, as normal, the OIDC provider, which is the identity provider basically, will send, hey, send me your credential proof. Okay, so in that case, the digital wallet is going to say, hey, user, are you okay with that? Give consent, you're good. Okay, I'm going to now send the proof. And then the identity provider, look at this, it's going to use a distributed ledger in order to validate that this DID does exist. The DID does exist, and it has a public key, and gets a public key and use it to validate the proof. And if the verification succeeded, we are good to go, and then all the other steps follows as normal. So nothing different. So only the steps in which we send the proof that the credentials are there. There's no username and password login. There's just the DID, and which is a distributed identifier, and the proof related to it. Sometimes you will see me saying, in some cases you send the credential, some cases you send a proof of the credential. It's just called a credential presentation, not just a proof. But in all cases, it is making sure that no one knows except what is exactly needed. That yes, I am a legitimate user, but not any additional information. So this is, I've been trying to push the blockchain a little bit because I think throwing it in the mix sometimes just confuses people. So I think the idea here is that we're looking for a distributed store, and blockchain does this. Does this because it is decentralized, it's open, it's trustworthy. If there's an operation that goes in the chain, it cannot be changed. You know, it is cryptographically protected. And, you know, it just serves all the purposes that we need. Think about it. This is like the real manifestation of a secure, distributed, or decentralized databases, right? So really, the self-sovereign identity is based on a lot of emerging standards that's coming up. And so all this is stuff that are growing up each and every single day. So basically, there's three things that are very important for SSI to work well. So the first thing is the DIDs, which is the distributed identities that we talked about. And the second thing is the verifiable credentials. Like I can provide a credential that can be verified in a cryptographic secure way. And then the third one is the ledger, which is where we're going to store this thing. So this is what makes it work. But also there's other stuff like the need to manage those decentralized keys, and DKMS through OASIS is important as a standard. W3C also have been working on the DIDs and defining that. The DID authentication through the DIF and IETF, verifiable credentials through the W3C. All this is like components that you find tons of working groups currently working to shape it and evolve it. Because yes, this is evolving. It is definitely an evolving, exciting area. So the SSI stack, as you can see here, we're trying to build trust the decentralized way. And I love this diagram because it really kind of just shows that it's not okay, let's just create this DID and send it. And no, there is a supporting framework around making SSI a reality. And from layer 1, where you're identifying how do you create those distributed identities? How are they created? What are the fields of it? What does it look like? And how are they also stored, right? So the did registry, and then, so that's layer 1. You go up and say, okay, in order for these two peers to talk together, what are the protocols to make this happen? So as we said, you can go HTTPS, then there's going to be still the intermediaries in the middle, or you can opt for end-to-end protection through secure messaging, through DID-COM, right? And then you go on to credentials, and then how these are issued, and how you can orchestrate these issuers and the verifiers, and the ability to do the validations and the cryptographic validations needed, all to the governance, because it is important to just be able to create the governance framework, or else things will just grow out of hand really fast. So maybe really universal identity layer that's missing from the internet is possible. But it will not be possible except if we bring all those components together in a way that is centralized control, but it's really still distributed to be working with. It's a mind shift of taking the central control from the internet and pushing it to the owners of the identities, and still keeping a control through transparency of events. So principles of SSI, I like to bring this just because the truism of SSI is what is very enticing, because we don't want to lose sight of that. It's important to reflect that existence is preserved. It's around the user. Control, user is in control. Access should be able to access their data. Transparency, persistent, portability, interoperability. And I'll check here on two things, portability and interoperability. It's important that my data, my identity, digital identity, should not be held by a certain third-party identity provider. It's my own. I am the owner of it. And of course, interoperability. Like, don't tell me Apple Pay, okay? Because it's a digital wallet, but that's just very restricted use cases, right? We want it to be much bigger than that. A growing framework that is consistent. Minimalism. You don't disclose more than what's needed. And consent. Respect for the user's desire on what they want to share and what they don't want to share. Even providing a proof with zero knowledge. And then this is just very close to my heart, because my thesis was actually on zero knowledge proofs, which I adore, by the way. So I also put this for you here, just so that you can see now there is lots of efforts to try to identify what are the different implementations out there that are implementing self-sovereign identities as a framework, and through a ledger, through a blockchain. And you do have the products, as you can see. The interesting thing here, though, and this is I got from a very nice survey, actually, and a comparative study. It's published by Austin, Texas University in partnership with industry as well. And you will see some non-functional requirements as well as functional requirements, and how each of those compare. So obviously, I see that UPort seems to be rocking it down there, but you can just see how things stand, and where your use cases can evolve, and how you guys as the universities can also help us evolve this space. Things to consider for the journey. I would say there will always be risks. Think about if you have a digital wallet, like your wallet, your digital wallet, and there's an identity leakage there. It can be big. And other stuff also is, what about change? Like, if there's a need for an identity change, heck, this is stored in a ledger, and that means the blockchain distributed ledger, things do not change. It's immutable. And with that, this is just a challenge to be solved. How are we going to handle revoking identity? Distributed key management is always one of the biggest challenges, right? Offline access, blockchain needs to be online. Cost considerations like infrastructure. For example, even that I gave you about the university, it requires that we have the support in both areas, right? I would say that we really need to get there. The status of risk in the identity space is really, really unsettling. And we need to have a way to play a game better than the passwords piece and the password list as well. Like it's not that different, but play it in a better way than having an intermediary, which is the source of a lot of problems, and just give back power to the users. So if we can do this together, that adds absolutely that would be greatest. And yeah, and thank you so much for your time. It's really hopefully that was useful and insightful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. It was great talk. You have applause here. It's great. It's a very hot topic. And I have a few questions. I try to summarize them. Probably the first one is from Gerald. I guess it's from PSU. It says Facebook tries to implement metaverse, a new virtual world. Do you think it's hard to verify digital identity when they are online?
I'm sorry, can you repeat this again? You were cutting a little bit.
Is it hard to verify digital identity when they are offline?
Offline. So so there are ways.
When they are online.
Where they are online. So yeah, so actually the blockchain works when things are online. And the whole idea is that when so first of all, there's multiple validations and verifications happening. So the first one is the proof when it is sent, and then it's validated that this is actually, by a legitimate issuer. The validations, the search from the blockchain to pull the public key corresponding to the distributed identifier. So yeah, so you need those components to be online to do that. Now, for something like as we talked about, like the transmission of the DIDs and these things, this can be done through the secure messaging, which is not related to the HTTPS protocol, right? So that's a different thing, but that's but for the blockchain, you need those nodes to be up.
Okay. We still have time. The other one is from Shah Khalid. Because you're using a distributed ledger blockchain, it says, can you give more details about the vulnerabilities, right? Of the
Yeah, sure. So the idea here is from a vulnerabilities perspective, if the digital wallets leaked the credentials, if these credentials were stolen and things like that, that's like one of the most important hot areas right now. Now, for the blockchain itself, the problems actually is in how restrictive the blockchain is. Like once the information is there, it just stays there. So some of the problems would be if someone would, for example, try to store some sensitive PII there by mistake or something, like it's problematic. And so things around that, absolutely, yeah.
And then Jacob Pan, you hear me well?
It's cutting a little bit, but I think I'm able to.
The next question is about how do you deal with identity theft?
Yes.
How is identity?
Yeah, so the whole just like we talked about the wallets leakage, but the whole idea of the SSI is to reduce the problem of identity theft. And the reason is what is the reason of the identity theft? The reason was usually there are those parties that are storing your digital identity and interacting with it and sharing it with others that they shouldn't have been sharing it with. Think about even say the Facebook events where they were you might be using Facebook as your trusted identity provider to log into multiple sites, and then now you don't know if they're sharing your information with others. And also, aside from the hacks and all the things, so the use of the self-sovereign identity brings the identity closer to the user. It makes it only within this digital wallet where you hold these multiple identities, what we call the distributed identities or the DIDs, and you control exactly what type of information is shared. And so it is reduced, the risk is reduced drastically. It's one of the benefits of SSI.
Yeah. And it's saying search engine will work with SSI decentralized model, or how others can have access to the individual data in this model.
So access through the data is only by the consent of the user. The user is the one that shares the data. So and that is the thing. Facebook cannot be selling data anymore. The reason Facebook is selling data is because they have unlimited access to it all the time, because users create accounts with Facebook, right? That is the reason why all your data is stored in this account, and then they sell it. But then now we're saying, no, you cannot do this, because the user never really, they decide what they want to share with you through this. Even sometimes users can stay totally anonymous by sharing a zero knowledge proof of their identity. So you don't share their identity credential at all. They share just a zero knowledge proof that they are the holders of the identity. And that's it. They don't share all the data that is now like all over the place in Facebook, and they collect tons of information about us. And now this is going to be stopped. So yeah.
Yeah, the next one is Dan. Of course, he's a speaker. He asked a very good question too. How to deal with evil ledger operator that permits forget identities to be made immutable?
So I guess that definitely goes in the ledgers different types of problems that we try to solve. Like, it's not something that just like I mentioned towards the end, there's not a silver bullet solving every single thing in the space. There's lots of things that still need to be solved for. That's for example, when we are creating those ledgers, and how are they, even the development of these ledgers, are the algorithms implemented correctly? But that is where, if you look at the SSI stack, this is where the governance authorities exist up there. So the governance stack has like 4 layers. So it starts with the identities, communication, and then it goes through all the way at the top to the governance authorities. And so that is what really governs how ledgers are being operated and all these kinds of things, and all the standards needs to be abided with it. Hopefully there will be certifications at some point. But also there's another thing I wanted to mention. Not everything requires also going back to a ledger and saving it. This model of peer-to-peer communication, sometimes there is a use for what we call peer DIDs, or peer distributed identifiers. And in that case, if it's super sensitive and things like that, say a group of financial companies or something, and they can have their own closed blockchain or ledger, and then they basically establish this can use this private ledger. That's one. But then also, aside from the ledger altogether, peer-to-peer private DIDs is also a way.
Yeah, there's one Koravic who wanted to ask a question, but he raised his hand. He wanted to ask it, but I don't think he can. But he should normally, Koravic, if you want, you ask the question on the chat. I'm happy to take it. Yeah. Okay, so I have probably a final one. I mean, you're talking about the sovereign identity architecture. When I look at it, it's still a centralized architecture. It's not distributed. And your architecture is still, you have the central registry and you have the classical attacks and so on. So how different if it's quite centralized?
It's really not, though. So think about it that way. Think about the concepts of what this ledger is holding, what this registry is holding. This is not holding anything related to credentials or identity proofs or any of that. It's holding basically the public key piece. Just basically certifying that this distributed identifier is related to the public key piece. But otherwise, when you're holding this identity, you can go and deal with it anywhere in the world. The companies do not need to go back to your issuer. It's distributed in the sense that the users can take it and use the identities any way they need. They can get validated also locally. Yeah.
But the registry is live because you have a central registry, right?
But the registry the blockchain is not just a central registry. It's a distributed central registry, right? So that's why blockchains bring up lots of hope in that area, because it is the definition of decentralized databases made right. So it is decentralized by nature, but also not only that, the way the identities are used are totally decentralized.
And I think we have the question. I would like to thank you. Thank you very much, Ingy, for the great talk. And you will have a lot of people who will be asking a question, including Koravich. And we'll move to the next talk. And from the next talk is, is from Keatron. And I will give the hand now to Jakapan to introduce Keatron. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sahi. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ingy. Thank you for the fantastic talk. So, hello, everyone. My name is Keatron from the PSU-RMIT. I will be the chair for this session. And today, we would like to welcome our second speaker, Keatron. Let me introduce Keatron. Keatron Evans, he is the principal security researcher at InfoSec Institute. He's composed a book, Chain Exploit Advanced Hacking Attacks from Start to Finish, which is a very interesting book. And as we can see, he holds dozens of security certificates. All of them are very interesting, and I'm looking to have lots of certificates like him as well. So welcome, Keatron. I will let you start to hear what you have got to say.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm gonna take over the screen share here, if that's okay. Are you able to see it okay?
It's okay, it's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so my name is Keatron Evans, and I'm gonna be talking to you about practical threat hunting and kind of give you some insights, give you some ideas to show that, first of all, just about anybody can do this. You don't have to be an expert to get started. You can get started with very basic skills, but you can grow into an expert pretty easily if you follow, the right pattern. We will also talk about why threat hunting is actually important. So let's jump right into it. So first off, when we say threat hunting, we have to understand that we are assuming, we have accepted that the threat actors have gotten into our environment. In other words, we have no illusions that we're going to keep them out 100% of the time. Sometimes they're going to get past our defenses, they're going to get into the environment. Threat hunting is a proactive approach, whereas we assume that they have gotten in. Now, instead of waiting until we get an alert or a firewall alert or an IDS alert or something like this, we go into the environment and hunt them, assuming that they're there and we just don't see them. So it gives us a more proactive approach to, our environment and security. It also decreases threat actor dwell time if you do it well. And what we mean by dwell time is the time when a hacker or threat actor gets into your environment, from that time to the time that you find out, that space in there is called dwell time. Okay, so we want to be able to shrink that time to where there's not a lot of space from when they get into the environment and when we find out. Because if they're in the environment for, the average now is about 100 days, is about how long a threat actor is in the environment before the average organization finds out that the threat actor is in the environment. 100 days is way too long. So this aims to try to help bring that down. Because if you find them, before, so they do something to alert, you might find them before they're able to do whatever action it is they're actually in there to do. You can truly start proactive hunting, and it finds things traditional security techniques and solutions don't, like true advanced persistent threat actors, advanced malware, and threat actors living off the land, because the things that would normally cause alerts, they just don't do those things anymore if they're really, really advanced threat actors. All right. So some myths around threat hunting. You have to already be a cybersecurity expert to get into threat hunting. You don't. Being seasoned helps a ton. Having experience in one other area of cybersecurity definitely helps. If you have experience in other areas, say pen testing and forensics, that really helps a lot, an incident response. Another myth is you must subscribe to threat intel feeds to threat hunt. Well, you don't have to. And the last myth is threat hunting is only applicable to big organizations, and this is absolutely not true. Any size organization can take advantage of threat hunting, whether you do it yourself or if you bring in organizations like mine to do it for you. So what we'll discuss will be what threat hunting is, common threat hunting tools and techniques, applicability of it, attack techniques, network forensics, memory forensics, host and system forensics, and threat signature creation. We'll also do a demonstration. So most of this presentation time will be spent with me demonstrating an advanced rootkit, showing you how tricky rootkits can be and how threat hunting oftentimes is how we find these things in the environment, especially if it's a rootkit or a piece of malware that's been authored for that specific organization. And if you're a big organization and you have lots of information that these bad guys want, then they will absolutely design and build malware custom for your organization. And that's what we're going to be looking at, an example of what that might look like. Now, one of the fastest growing areas in cybersecurity is threat hunting. It is a needed skill in most organizations. And what it allows us to do is meet the attacker on the battlefield instead of meeting them after they've been in the environment for 100 days. They've already taken half the stuff out that they want. And, now we're trying to actually do something. Now, so some interesting facts here to kind of reinforce the idea that, you're going to miss stuff. So 60%, of the stuff that we find in environments is just malware that's not detected. You have another 45% that's viruses and other malware. And then you have things like fileless malware activities that makes up like 5%. And really this 5% is where we're trying to focus a lot of our threat hunting, because most of these other things here, they're going to be picked up or alerted to primarily by the things that you already have in place, your intrusion detection, your host-based intrusion prevention and protection, all of these things. Okay. Now, if it gets worse, percentage of encryption exfiltration, most network-based intrusion detection needs unencrypted traffic to make decisions about traffic. More and more, if it's encrypted, we see that our anti-malware host-based intrusion detection and prevention may be blinded. A lot of the problem here is in the industry, some of the vendors will tell you that, well, if you have this product in line, this product can break the encryption on the fly or in line. And the sad part about that is what they're really saying is, if it's something that's very well defined like SSL or some other mechanism like that, they may be able to man in the middle of that, decrypt it, inspect it, re-encrypt it, and send it out the other side. But that does nothing for symmetric tunnels and things like that most of these droppers set up once they get into the environment. So you're not just going to break that in line. You know, you might be able to go break it after the fact, getting keys out of memory and stuff like that. But that's a different conversation. So what we're showing here is when you look at the average exfiltration today, most of it happens over an encrypted tunnel. They're not sending your data out over clear text. So even some of the things like your DLP and stuff like that has trouble with some of the encryption that we're seeing happen now. It used to be pretty easy to do this. We used to set up a good DLP solution. It had the ability to, accelerate SSL connections so that it could inspect those, but now they're using other things and it's becoming definitely a problem. Worse, APTs are getting better at living off the land. So instead of dropping malware into the environment that they know you're going to detect, they're just coming into the environment and creating what they need in the environment. All right, that is just some of the problems we're dealing with now. So what does this all mean? Well, we need to be more proactive in looking for threats. We have to understand that most of the defenses that we have in place will fail if it's a serious threat actor that's trying to get into our environment. So because of all these things that we've just said, threat hunting is born. All right, and that's how we got to where we are. So what steps are required to do threat hunting? Well, number one, you have to select a topic or create what we call a hypothesis. In other words, if you're going to say we assume that we're compromised, then what will we likely compromise by? What data in our environment would likely be the primary target data of a threat actor that got in? All right. So this is what ends up happening when we look at the process. We have to figure out what we're going to hunt, because you can't just go into an environment and say, well, we're just going to hunt to see if we can find something. That's not realistic. And when we're talking about a big enterprise environment, it's just too much data, too much real estate to cover. There's no possible way you could make headway approaching it like that. You have to have very specific things that you're going to hunt for, because you're going to need to go to the SOC team, to the SIM team. You're going to have to pull a lot of data, a lot of logs, and you're going to have to be very specific in that so that you don't, basically denial of service yourself, DDoS yourself with the amount of information that you're pulling in. All right, so it's important to figure out what you're going to hunt and be very intentional in your hunt. You're not just in the environment hunting for things. No, you're hunting for very specific threats. You're hunting for very specific behaviors because you've decided that that's likely to be going on in the environment based on, whatever it may be. Once you've done that and you picked it, you research it, you go and collect the necessary data, and then you conduct the hunt, right? After you end the hunt, now you can take what you found and quantitate the findings. Because what generally happens at this point where you quantitate the findings, if you find or confirm a threat, then you are able at that point to basically hand this off to the incident response team. And one of the things that I want to point out that we have to be careful with, and I've seen a lot of new threat hunting teams kind of get destroyed, is you want to make sure you don't let yourself grow into just an extension of the incident response team. Because I've seen it happen where most hunts are now products of information they got from incident response. There was an alert on this, there was an alert on that. Or we saw an alert that looked like this was going on. Can you go research that or research this? If you're doing that, you suddenly shift it back to being reactive. You're reacting to something that the incident response team is seeing, and they're reacting to something they're being alerted by. So at that point, you're now just glorified incident response. The point of threat hunting is you're not affected by that, at least directly. Now, if the SOC finds something that looks a little suspicious, but it doesn't necessarily warrant a response, or it doesn't necessarily warrant being classified as an event or an incident, then that's okay, but you still have to take it through the process of making it a topic and forming an hypothesis and researching and collecting data around that idea. You don't just become an extension of the incident response team. Otherwise, you lose your ability to be proactive, and you're just now playing whack-a-mole again, okay? So lessons learned is where you find out, what you did wrong, what you could do better, and then you disseminate this information as it needs to be done. Most threat hunting teams fail because they don't follow a process like this. They get in and they just kind of come out guns blazing. We're elite, we're smart, we know more than everybody else. So let us just go find everything. And if it's not organized and it's not focused and you're not working from an hypothesis, it's probably not going to be very successful. Now, what I said in the beginning is it's very helpful if you're coming into threat hunting from other areas like incident response or pen testing or forensics, because you're going to be using a lot of those skills. One of the most important skills that we use in threat hunting is memory forensics. Memory is still possibly the best place, or at least one of the best places, to find evidence of a breach because it's something that's happening right now. And also, you have to think about it. Anything that a computer does, it happens in memory. Before that computer can send a packet out to the internet, before that computer can accept the packet into the internet, before it can run a program or open a file or even type a note in a Word document, all of that's happening in memory. That Word document is open in memory. That internet connection is a socket in memory. It's all in memory. So it's a great place to hunt because you can see things as they actually are. And in the demonstration I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how everything that you do on that system to look for this threat, you won't find it. But when we take a memory dump and do memory forensics, you'll find that the threat is there and it's real, and you would have never seen it had it not been for basic memory forensics, okay? It also works in cloud environments because if you think about a virtual machine in the cloud, that virtual machine still has memory, right? A container still has virtual memory. So you can still do memory dumps, see what was happening at the time. And it's a great way for us to learn from our threat actors, to learn what they're doing. There's also network forensics. This is another important part that we do in threat hunting. A lot of what we do is just digging through tons and tons and tons of packet data. Now, it's still a primary good source. Packets don't lie. And some patterns in behavior are only apparent when viewing traffic, right? Not even viewing traffic from the perspective of one device, but if you can kind of hover over the network and see traffic patterns, sometimes that is your first indicator of a threat actor. Because when threat actors start doing things like moving horizontally, using whatever method they want, PowerShell or whatever the case may be, that pattern is going to look different than what most others in the organization are doing at the time. And for big enterprise organizations, what we found is we've actually found a lot of success implementing machine learning and AI type principles. I won't say AI, but AI principles to our data parsing and our packet parsing, because it helps us to more readily identify those patterns and in a much faster way using the right combination of algorithms and the right types of data science. So that's something that's actually helping out a lot on that part. Now, that's going to take us to the demo here. And what I just want to show you basically is the fact that you can't trust what you think you can in these environments. Now, the VMs I'm using here, I want to point out something. This person that wrote this rootkit, there are many different variants. There's over like 100 variants of it out there because he makes a different version for every version of ones that comes out. Now, for me to do this demonstration, I need to do a full memory dump after we infect this machine. And that's going to take, if this were like I was running Windows 10 here, I'd have to have a minimum of like 4 gigs of RAM. That dump takes about 15 minutes. So I didn't want to waste 15 minutes of time us just sitting here waiting for the memory dump. So I'm running the machine that allows me to run it on the least amount of memory, 256 megs of memory. Imagine that we can actually run an operating system on that. But that's what we're doing here. So I want to take this rootkit and, think of this as just a proof of concept. There are many, many, many rootkits out there. And what we're going to have it do is run netcat. And we're going to have it hide netcat also from the kernel. And this does something called kernel hooking. And it also uses, it does something called HAL emulation, or between your Windows kernel and your hardware layer, there's something called the HAL layer. And this is where your drivers and DLLs and all that live. It's how your kernel talks hardware. So good rootkits hook into there, and they can make the hardware lie to the Windows kernel. And that's what we're going to see happen here. So let's save it. One of the things that it does is it makes, Netcat listen on port 100. So what I want to prove before we run this rootkit is right now, this machine is sitting at 172.116 or 172.16, 78.139. We are not able to telnet or connect to port 100 on this machine. Let's prove that. All right, so we can't connect. Now, once we start this rootkit, and remember, we have basic investigative techniques that we always use. For example, if I did task list, that shows me a list of running processes. That's the same as doing this, right? It's the same as going to task manager. We can see every single process, and we don't have any processes hidden. We can see them all, and we're running with administrative privilege. So we can see everything. We also use netstat. This is stuff that's built into Windows to show us listening and established connections, right? We can see there's listening there. We can see there's one established connection to the internet, but nothing else outside of that, right? Now, what we're looking for is port 100. Watch what happens now. So I'm going to run the rootkit. And by the way, it hides anything that begins with the characters hxdef. So let's create a text file here. And I'll show you how slick this is. It acts proactively as well. So if I create, let's say I have a secret piece of code, and I name it hxdef Dan Hauser .txt. Well, that thing instantly gets hidden by the rootkit because, again, it's hooking into the kernel and causing the kernel to not be able to see things that the rootkit doesn't want it to see. You can't like a trib and unhide things. Like, trust me, anything you could think of was, what if we look at this, or what if we try that? This has already been tried. Like, you just can't find it. Like, it's not there effectively. So, but here's the thing. Do we have any weird processes running? So if we look at Task Manager again, we don't see any rogue processes. So we don't see a netcat or anything like that running. If we look at netstat again, it looks the same as it did before. There's nothing listening on port 100. Just for you that don't have a networking background, when you look at netstat, it shows you every port that's listening, every port that something can connect to. And notice port 100 is absent from that. But let me ask you this question. If port 100 is not open and netcat is not running, then how are we able to do that now? So we are able to now connect to a port on this machine and get a command shell, and the machine has no idea that it's going on. If we were to do a netstat again, you would think that it showed that established connection, but it can't, because it doesn't know about port 100. It can't see it. It literally does not have the ability to see it. Whatever you install on top of Windows to see this port, it's not going to see it either, because guess what? Whatever you install on Windows still has to ask the kernel to get the answer, and the kernel doesn't know, right? So this is a situation where you're kind of, if you don't know what to look for, how rootkits work, you would kind of be lost here. And I would say 90% of most investigators out there would not know how to get past this point. They would look at these settings and they would think that everything is okay. But here's what I'm going to do. If I'm investigating a machine, I'm going to assume that something's wrong. I'm going to ask it some questions, right? And even if I think it's going to lie to me, I'm still going to ask it because I want to give it a chance to tell me a lie. Because at some point, I'm confident that I will find out the truth. And then I will compare that truth to what it told me. And if they're too far off, that gives me some idea of the severity and the complexity of the infection, right? So I want to say task list. I want to get a list of running processes. There they are. And we're just going to name it, since we're framing Dan for all the attacks, his name is dan.txt. We're going to also run netstat. And I'm going to write it to the same file. We're also going to run ARC because I want to see who this device communicated with most recently and append it to that file. And we're going to do SC query because I want to see what services are enabled, because sometimes rootkits hide as services. So I want to look for those as well. And we're also going to get the system build information and append it to that same file. Now, this is a common little triage that I do every time on any machine that I'm investigating. If it's Windows, I create this little file and it looks like this. It shows me all the processes that Windows knows about. It shows me all of the sockets or listening ports that Windows knows about. It shows me all the system, all the query information for the services and all the system build info. Right? Now, borrowing from my knowledge as a pen tester or hacker, let's watch this. Let's take this file, because remember, we don't trust this machine. I'm going to copy this file with this data to somewhere where I know I can get to it remotely. Now I'm going to go to another machine that is not compromised. We're going to use our machine here as our investigator now. So we're pretending like this machine is now our investigator machine. It's not the attacker. I'm going to bring over that data file or that text file. I'm going to read that file. And I'm going to look specifically for listing ports. Now watch this. I'm going to say read that file. I'm going to grep for listening because I just want to see listing ports like that. And then I'm going to open another terminal. Let's sudo it to root also. All right, so watch this. I'm going to take this listing port list now from the outside, right? From the outside, because we've already seen what Windows told us from the inside, looking out. Now let's come on the outside and I'm going to look in. And the way we do that is we could use a scanner like Nmap. So I'm going to scan this sucker from the outside and look at that. So Nmap on the outside is telling me, hey, Mr. Evans, port 100 is open on that machine, whereas the machine itself is saying, oh, no, Mr. Evans, I would not ever lie to you. Port 100 is not open. If you were in my shoes, who would you trust? Would you trust the machine that you're investigating that you think may be compromised? Or would you trust your non-biased, uninfected Linux machine that's not susceptible to Windows malware? I'm definitely going to go with my Kali machine here and say that I believe port 100 is indeed open. So the next step in a process like this is you want to find out what's on the port. So I'm going to scan just that port and do what's called a service probe, where Nmap actually interrogates the port, because I want to see what's there. And Nmap is very clear on what it thinks is there. It's telling me, hey, it's a backdoor. Rightfully so, because when it connected to that port, it's basically getting this. It's getting a command shell like that with, guess what, privilege? The highest possible privilege you could ever have in Windows, which is system. That's higher than domain admin, that's higher than local admin, that's higher than anything, right? It's literally got kernel level privilege there. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and concur with Nmap that it's a backdoor, right? So now that we know that, now we've confirmed that something's not right. So at this point, again, even though we're hunting, we don't have any alerts or anything like that, we're hunting, we've discovered something just because of our knowledge of how things work that seems a little bit off, all right? Now I have to go in investigative mode and evidence collection mode And anytime you're investigating specifically a live hack, there is something that we talk about in incident response called the order of volatility, which means you always collect the most volatile evidence first. Now, who can tell me for 1,000 points, what is the most volatile evidence? Is it hard drive or RAM? Let's see who answers. RAM, exactly. So now our first step needs to be to do a memory dump, because remember what I said in the beginning, everything happens in RAM, everything happens in memory. Even the rootkit's tricks that it's using to hide stuff from the kernel, that's happening in memory. So let's see what happens if we go over, we pull a tool over to quickly get a memory dump. And now you see why you use this machine that I could run with 256 megs of RAM. It's because I can do this memory dump and watch how quickly it goes for us. So I'm just gonna write it right here to see. And we're just gonna call it, again, we're framing Dan for all hacks today. So we're gonna name it dan.raw. And we start our memory dump and it's done. All right, so now right in that directory, we have a raw memory dump, which is what you want. This is a full raw memory dump, and it's named dan.raw. So immediately, just in case the threat, the actor catches on to the fact that we're now on them and we're hunting them. Because there's an episode, there's an entire day-long technique class that I do on this, where the technique is focused on being stealthy as a hunter, right? Because if you're tracking someone in the woods or wherever it may be, you don't want to be noisy because you don't want them to know that you're tracking them. So in threat hunting, you also have to have an element of stealth. And one thing we're doing here is no matter what the attacker finds out, once we get this memory dump and get it off this machine, I think that machine is gonna put it on, we're just gonna move it off to another machine here. This way we're simulating a real world situation, so 195, where we're saying that now that we know that we've probably got some good stuff in memory, we wanna push this memory dump off this machine just in case the actor decides to come in and start trying to sabotage the machine to cover tracks. So now we're gonna push this thing over. And of course, you'd be using like SSH or something in real life. So it's done. So what that means is we got the memory dump, we've got a full image of what was in memory. Now we've moved it off this machine. So no matter what the attacker does at this point, they can never undo the things that we're going to be able to prove this happened up to this point. Okay. So now I go to my investigator machine. That's what we're going to call this Kali instance now. And I'm going to bring over that same memory dump. Dan.raw. All right. So now using a little tool that we all use in threat hunting and forensics and incident response called volatility. Actually, the first time I met Dan, me and one of his old colleagues were using volatility to look at some stuff in memory on a whole bunch of machines. I'm sure Dan remembers that. So I'm going to look at that dump, that memory dump. And I'm going to get a list of running processes. So watch this important key here. Remember, this is a dump from the machine that's still running right now. So when we tell volatility to give us a list of running processes, look at, I want you to pay attention to these two processes right here. hxdef100.exe and nc.exe, pitch 3436 and 3160. These processes are running, but when we go to the machine itself, right, and we're running as admin, when we go here, and we look at running processes, we don't see either of those. They're not there. So what do we do then? Because now we know that there's a severe infection here. Well, just to give you a few things that we always do. First, I want to do PS tree because I want to see what those processes are related to. And what I've just learned is, for example, if you look at the root of Windows, it's going to be system itself. Anything that's got one dot is a child of system. This is easy to understand, right? So SMSS is a child of system. Anything with two dots, CSRSS and WinLogon, are children of SMSS. Anything with three dots is a child of WinLogon. Anything with four dots is a child of services. That includes our little friend here, hxdef100.exe. So now I know why it's running with system privilege, which is like root in Windows, the highest privilege you can have in Windows. It's because it's running as a child of this, so it's inheriting services permission, which is always system. And guess what? This little guy here, netcat, is running as a child of hxdef. So it inherited system privilege as well. And guess what? Command.exe, which is a command shell, is running as a child of netcat. So what we can say is hxdef for sure launched netcat. Netcat for sure launched a command session, right? Because we can look at the parent-child relationship over here. The parent ID of netcat, right, is PID 3160. 3160 is hxdef. The parent ID of command.exe, right, is this right here, and that's netcat. The parent of netcat is 3436, and that's this right here, that's hxdef. So we can clearly see that relationship and kind of do the timeline here and figure out what happened when just from the memory dump. Now, more importantly, when we did a netstat on that thing, look at what it told us. It told us that there were no port 100s listening, and there's definitely no connections, right? Only connection is out to the internet. But is that true? Well, remember, memory doesn't lie. So in volatility, I'm just going to run the connections plugin, and lo and behold, look at that. I can see that first connection that we saw on the internet, but I can also see a connection to port 100, which we can't see when we go to the machine and look at it. So effectively, everything that the machine is hiding from us with the rootkit, we can still see it in memory. Now, the last one of these I want to show you is command scan, because it shows you a history of any commands, right, that have been typed on the victim. And you can kind of see that here. Everything that you saw me type earlier, it's recorded in memory. And volatility is just has a good way of taking what's in memory and presenting it to us in a way that's digestible to us. Now, the last cool thing I want to show you about that, let's say, all right, we know that the bad process, right? We know that process is probably hxdef. We know it's bad, but we don't know what it is. It's PID 3436. Well, watch this. We can tell volatility. I'm going to make a directory named Dan. I'm going to tell volatility to take that process, dump it into the Dan directory. And the process I want to dump is 3436. And volatility actually takes the memory dump and carves that functioning binary right out of memory. So now we can take that binary. If you took this thing and put it on a Windows machine right now and double clicked it, it would execute. But we're not going to do that. Now, in a real case, I would absolutely take this and put it in a sandbox and launch it and study it and start reverse engineering it to see what it's doing or what it's trying to do. But for this demonstration, to make this quick, I'll just take it out to VirusTotal and let you see what VirusTotal has to say about it. But first, let's copy it to somewhere we can get to it. So I'm going to copy it to my home directory. And that's executable 3436. So on VirusTotal on the internet. Now, let me caution you, in a real situation, I would never do this. Like, you don't take malware that you find on a customer's network and put it on something public like VirusTotal, because that malware could have already collected confidential or secret information from that customer network. And now you're exposing that information to the public internet if you put something like that on VirusTotal. So keep in mind, this is only for demonstration. And we're putting up executable 3436 there, which is the one that we just pulled. And as you can see, VirusTotal is lighting it up red. It's like, hey, it's bad. It's a rootkit. It's a rootkit. It's a rootkit. It's a rootkit. It's a backdoor. Right? So at this point now, I take all this information, I take it to the SOC, take it to the CISO, and present it to them. And then I give them like 10 minutes to freak out, because they're always going to have their 10-minute session of just complete meltdown. Because you've just shown them that there's a very probably advanced threat actor that's in an environment that's been in there for who knows how long. So there's going to be some concern and stress there, right? But now you have identified it. You've identified at least a few indicators of compromise or things that you can look for to see if it exists anywhere else in the environment. And you've given that incident response team, that reverse engineering team, a great place to start. Now, this will probably launch a new incident, but you know, that's what you should be getting. When you're threat hunting, this is part of the value you should be getting from it, is you should be finding things that your automated stuff is simply not finding. And this is an example of a threat or an infection with a modern day piece of rootkit like this. You know, the updated version of it, you're never going to find it with traditional tools. And this is where threat hunting becomes so very important. All right. So now I know there's going to be some questions. So what I would like to do at this point is kind of pause right here and ask questions. And I'm going to leave this screen up just in case I need to go back and demonstrate something. Because remember, all these things that we just saw, the processes running and things like that, if we go to the machine, none of that stuff shows up right now. So this is, you know, you should kind of clearly see the value of, first of all, memory forensics, and also the value of threat hunting. Now, one other quick thing I want to show you is this is a real case that we worked on years ago. All right, so this covert channel PCAP came from a case, and we took it and sanitized it through this Python script so you can't see who it is. But I'm going to use a tool called Zeek, which is also called Bro, was the original name. And I'm going to take that PCAP, rip that thing into pieces. So now you can see there's all these logs that it created. This was something I'd never seen in a case. We were talking about encryption in the beginning and how things are encrypted. Let me show you an encryption mechanism that I'd never seen before. So if I look at the connection log, you can read up on how Zeek breaks all of this down. It takes a capture or a live traffic and breaks it into these cool logs for you. But if I point at the connection log and I look at source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port, and I'm also going to do protocol and duration. All right. What it does is it shows me every session. Now, this is just a small piece of the capture, but what jumped out at me immediately was, number one, these sessions that are like 10 seconds almost to the letter. Humans don't connect and disconnect the things that efficiently. So that was interesting to me. But more interesting to me was this last packet down here. And notice it says the protocol is ICMP. So when I dig into that, what that is it's an echo reply, right? So it's when you ping something, when you do ping Yahoo, that's an echo request. And what you get back is an echo reply. And what made me key in on this is because I know the ICMP protocol. I know that there should always be a request before there's a reply. And I spent 2 hours going back through traffic, looking for the request that launched this reply, and I never found it. So just that basic knowledge there of protocols, something didn't seem right because there should be a request there. So since I didn't see one, I went ahead and opened this thing in Wireshark. The actual PCAP, let's make sure we name it right. And I immediately went looking for ICMP, and lo and behold, I only found that one. And when I looked at that ICMP packet, I immediately knew something was up, because this payload, this is not what an ICMP packet should look like on the inside. What an ICMP packet should look like on the inside is something like this right here. All right, let's do this. This is easier to show you in Wireshark and in Windows. So we'll just jump over here for a second. So when we look at this capture, having to look around my camera here, I'm just going to simply ping. There we go. So I'm just going to ping the gateway. You know, it's going to send 4 pings. And then I want to show you what an ICMP packet should look like. Right? It's a known packet, like it's a known payload. A ping request and a ping reply should look like this. This is the payload you should be seeing that right there. It's basically the alphabet, or A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like alphabet and then letters or numbers. It should always be a predictable known pattern like this. It should never be what we saw over here, which is that. Now, I'll tell you what we ended up finding out. I spent about 2 weeks investigating this, and what it ended up being is this is an actual encryption key. So these threat actors were using an echo reply packet from an Amazon cloud device. It was a server in Amazon that was sending an echo reply packet down into this environment, knowing that that echo reply is going to be allowed in. So it was an echo reply with an encryption key in it. The malware that they planted on my customer's network was listening specifically for this echo reply packet to that machine, because it knew to grab that echo reply packet and pull out of it that encryption key. Then it used that encryption key, symmetric key, by the way, to establish a tunnel from inside the network back to Amazon. And then they exfiltrate that. There's no intercepting that man in the middle in that encryption like you can with SSL. The only way you'd be able to do that is if you knew this was happening. And guess what? Before we got there and found this, no one knew it was happening. So they had probably 2 or 3 months of encrypted, exfiltrated data that we slowly went through the process of decrypting by going and finding every instance of where this key was coming down, because these echo reply packets were coming down like every 7 seconds. So the key was changing every 7 seconds. And we had to literally go back methodically, look at the traffic, get the key out, get the packets, decrypt it, take it, come up with a decrypted version of the PCAPs, send that to have it analyzed. Like, it was a very manual process here. But we eventually solved it and was able to tell them every single piece of data that was exfiltrated in this method, and it turned out being quite a bit. All right, and all of this was from threat hunting operations. This was not incident response. It was 100%. We were just there hunting and we found these things. Right. So hopefully what you've seen now is the value of the threat hunting, and you've also seen the value of why memory forensics and traffic forensics, this stuff is never, ever going away. No matter how much cloud you do, everything still happens in memory. All right. So there'll always be need for this. So now we can address questions. Somebody wants to kind of take the lead.
Thank you very much, Keatron. It was very interesting presentation. I myself also work on the memory forensics So your presentation was really, really interesting. So let's first start with the question from Narrative. He asked, what if the memory dump itself, the memory dump tool itself was compromised?
What if the memory dump tool was compromised?
Yes.
Well, I mean, if you're a practicing threat hunter and a practicing forensics person, you should control your tools, right? Like you shouldn't, I didn't pull that tool off the internet. This is a tool that I have in my arsenal of tools. So these are known good tools that haven't been compromised. But if you're doing this kind of work, you know how to check your tools to keep them, to know you're not using something that's rooted.
He mentioned that there might be some malware that detect if the memory dump is running, and then if you try to hide and move to the disk, and then it will reload onto the RAM back again when the memory dump is not working.
Yeah,
it's quite very specific question.
Yeah, but that would, so the threat actor would have to know I'm doing a memory dump, right? So, I mean, we're talking about things that just don't happen, right? It would be like a once in a million chance that could happen. And part of what I'm trying to demonstrate here is there is no answer for every single possible cartoonish like scenario that you might dream up, right? It's just the stuff that you're asking, it's just not how threat actors operate. They're in there to accomplish a task. They're trying to get as much as they can, as fast as they can, and that's their objective. And again, part of my initial part of that was to be stealthy so that they wouldn't even know I was there until after we'd at least got that memory dump.
Okay, so
and also you can do a memory dump within Windows without using a tool, by the way. So you can make Windows do a raw memory dump as well.
Okay, so also I will ask the second question from Narrative. He asked, I support to install rootkit the adversary to have the system privilege on the victim. How to achieve this in practice?
So that's hacking, that's pen testing, right?
Yeah.
And that's a different class or a different presentation. I do teach classes on how to do that, but this is threat hunting, right? So remember, the whole point of threat hunting is you assume that they've already gotten into the environment, right?
Yep.
So we're past that point here. But I do teach classes on how you get to that point, you know, pen testing and advanced hacking and exploit development and that type of thing.
Okay, thank you. Wadom asks, does your demonstration work in the listed Windows version?
Yeah, it does. But I explained why I use that version. It's because I needed the memory dump to happen fast. For me to run Windows 10, I have to have a minimum, 8 gigs of RAM or something like that.
Yeah.
I practiced that, but that memory dump took about 16 minutes. So I didn't want it to be waiting, you guys to be waiting for 16 minutes for that memory dump to finish. But I mean, you know, you can just Google Windows 10 rootkits. You will find that there are thousands of rootkits that work against Windows 10.
Okay, perfect. Ian asks, can you provide some good resources to learn about these threat hunting? Maybe I think you can provide this in the chat later on, right?
Yes.
Yep. And now the question from myself. So in practice, when you perform the memory dumps, is there the way that you can dump memory from the dedicated machine, not the machine that's not the infected machine? Is it possible? Because machine might be a virtual machine.
Yeah. So again, it was just the environment. I was trying to keep a small environment. But what you would generally do, number one, is you would never dump the memory to the actual machine. You would dump the memory to a remote location or a network driver, an external driver, something like that, because you don't want to be writing anything to the machine if you don't have to. Secondly, you can remotely reach out to a machine and do a memory dump. As a matter of fact, when you look at a lot of your what we call EDR tools, endpoint detection and response tools, they're specifically designed to allow you to do what I just did remotely, right? So if you have like a really nice EDR product, you can take any one of your 50,000 machines and say, give me a memory dump of Dan's machine, or give me a memory dump of Ingy's machine, or whose ever machine, and you can do that remotely and pull that dump across the network, for sure.
Okay, so one last question. It seems like the threat hunting is manual approach. Is it possible that we can perform threat hunting in the larger scale, or is it possible to make it automate process?
Well, some parts, so I showed you the manual parts of it, because if I just pulled out some big automated tool and let it run, you wouldn't really get any value out of that, right? Because now you don't really know what it's doing under the hood. But we automate parts of it, right? Some parts of it is automated. For example, the part you didn't see is that packet capture that I showed you. The part you didn't see is how we got to that packet capture. And most of that was automated. So they had very big data algorithms that were carving through those packet captures, pulling out anomalies and things like that, or things that the algorithms considered to be outliers, right? And that ICMP packet that didn't have an echo request to it was an outlier. I'm the only person that looked at that and said, oh, this is weird. But the process of it being picked out and isolated into that little capture, that was a very automated process. You just didn't see that because, you know, I only have an hour to do a presentation here.
Okay, now unfortunately we run out of time. Thank you very much, Keatron. Hopefully we will have you again for the whole day. And so I will hand over to Waradom, which will be the chair for the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, sorry. I think you are mute.
Sorry, okay. Welcome to the third session. My name is Waradom Virapan from Prince of Songkla University. And right now we are to the third question from Rafał Łoś. Rafał Łoś, are you here? Chakapan, can you share, open the...
Hey guys, I am right here.
Sorry, okay. Keatron, you need to unshare your screen.
Rafał Łoś, he is the chief of security strategist at Livestream Managed Services. He is an industry innovator, and he is to work and provide to security as a service by rebuild pre-sale. He is also a member of Security Advisor Alliance. Today, he will going to present the topic of I love you, you love me. But why we are still at the security, we are also at the same page. And please welcome Rafał Łoś.
All right, everybody hear me okay?
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
perfect.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen and we'll go shortly here. Go. All right. One more second. All right. All right. Thank you for having me. My name is Rafał Łoś. I am currently the Vice President and Chief Security Strategist at a company called Livestream Managed Services. I've been in the industry for about 25 years, which makes me very old, like my friend Dan. And this talk is going to be very general. I think that there's a lot of good technical content, and I want to present, I think what I think is a bigger problem in our industry. So a little bit about me. Like I said, I've been in the industry about 25 years. I've worked for many big companies, and I've worked in consulting. So I've worked in General Electric and Hewlett-Packard and other types of companies. Also on the security side, I have been in a smaller company as well. And so here we go. So first, I want to ask you, we're going to address 3 basic questions about cybersecurity. The first one is what it is. So what is it? Why are we so bad at it? And what we should do differently. And I think the point of why we are so bad at it, the evidence is clear. Every day we see more breaches. Every day we see more tools. Every day we see more news on why security is a problem. So let's start there. Again, very basic discussion, but I think very necessary. So what is cybersecurity, right? What is the purpose and what is the job that we do? I think this is very important. And I think we need to take time to consider what it is that we do, because there are 2 versions of this, okay? First, the movie version that we all think of when we think of cybersecurity. We think about stopping hackers and criminals and, people with black masks and hoodies and dark rooms with laptops hacking away, doing things, right? There's the other thing is the hacking stuff in companies. We all want to work for a red team. We want to do penetration testing and do other cool things like in that movie, right? The one you guys are seeing, Mission Impossible. You want to come in through the roof and hack the computer and steal the data and do all the cool things. But there's the real life version of what we do. And I think that's the important part. The real life version is spreadsheets and risk analysis. And we spend a lot of time, sitting in meetings, and we spend a lot of time on Zoom calls and in projects. And we sit lots and lots of time staring at dashboards, relatively many different tools, many different platforms and programs. And we talk about doing, SIM and threat hunting and EDR and application security. But today I want to focus on defense. Okay, so I want to focus on protecting companies and protecting data and protecting our infrastructure. So I think that's the important part for me. I think there's enough bad guys out there to do bad things. I think there's enough good guys out there that can do bad things. I want to talk about good guys doing good things. So what is the purpose? Why do we have jobs? And I have been in front of audiences all over the world, and I ask a very simple question all the time. Why do we do security? Why do we do this? And some people say, stop hackers or prevent bad guys or this. But really, I think it comes down to 2 very, very simple things. We want to reduce technical risk, and I'll come back to that word risk in a moment. But reduce technical risk and protect critical business assets. So protect the things that matter to the company or the organization you work for. Whether it's a university, a government organization, a private company, we are here to provide safety, and we are here to provide security so the business can do business without losing its ability to operate. So if we think about what that means, it's the ability to balance risk and business. And our friends that work in the non-IT side of the company always think about this, and they tell me they make 1,000 risk decisions every day. How much money to have in the corporate bank account, what insurance to buy, whether to make investments or not, who to fire, who to hire, what direction to go to as a company. So our job is to provide input into that equation, into that mathematical equation, to help the business function. So really what you are is an advisor. Whether you're technical or you're non-technical like myself now, you are an advisor. And sometimes life is very exciting, right? You have, malware and bad guys doing bad things, and sometimes your company gets hacked, and sometimes you're finding, attackers before they can do damage, and it's really cool. and it's exciting. But sometimes life is boring, right? Because when I worked for companies on the security side of things, I always thought about a couple of basic things. I like it. When I was starting, I wanted life to be exciting every day. A year later, I wanted life to be boring every day. And here's why, right? When life is exciting, bad things are probably happening. And you don't get to sleep. You don't get to take lunch. You don't see your family. You don't get to watch the news. You don't get to go outside and see the sun for days at a time. And so you hope that life gets boring. But when life is boring, well, it gets really boring. And then we want life to be exciting again. And I think as cybersecurity professionals, we live between boring and exciting every day. And days when it's exciting, we want it to be boring. And when it's boring, we want it to be exciting. And I think cybersecurity is three things, okay? It's three very simple things. It's all of you. It's the people. It's the process, how we do what we do. When we take, we look at this dashboard and we take this data and we look at over here, we read the news and we look for TTPs and indicators of compromise through your different data lakes and your SIMs and your tools, and you try to find malware and do bad things, find the things that are happening, right? That's all the processes. And of course, people performing processes using tools. So you need tools. Cavemen use tools. Today we use tools. Whether you're a baker, whether you're a technologist, whether you are a taxi driver, it doesn't matter. You use technology and you use tools. But I think the basic thing is this is the order it goes in, okay? First people, then process, and last tools. So people use processes and operate processes, and then we leverage and use the tools to get those processes done by the people, not the other way around. Because in this industry, if you listen to all your vendors, the security companies and the people that want to sell you something, they will tell you the tools are the most important. The tools if you buy the right tool, the problem goes away. It's not true. In 25 years, I have never bought a single tool that has solved any one problem I've had ever. I promise you're not going to find one either. So here it is. To do cybersecurity right, you must understand a lot of things such as complex systems, okay? When you look at a web application, you go to buy, tickets for your favorite movie or a show, or you order an Uber or something online, or whatever you're doing. You can go play video games, whatever. When you connect, you use a front-end system that connects to a back-end system that connects to multiple other things. There's applications interacting using data and infrastructure and different network pathways, and we use network protocols, and we use physical and virtual infrastructure. You have to understand all those complex systems and how they function. You also have to understand applications. Whatever, Java, .NET, C, assembly language, as many of those applications and their programming languages and how they function, how to write code, how to destroy code, as much as that is possible. And I mentioned protocols, right? TCP, IP, Zigbee, whatever the protocol you're using, HTTP, SQL, whatever. You have to understand how that works, because you can't understand how to break it and how it can be protected until you understand how it works. I hope that makes sense to you. Now, you have to understand how everything works together. This is why I say, and I know teachers don't like me for this, but I say you can't go to school and learn cybersecurity. It doesn't work that way. You can go to school and spend years and learn the fundamentals, but ultimately you have to have experience. And you have to learn how to, connect applications to users, to data, to systems over networks. You have to know how that all works together. Now, this is a lot, but it is necessary. This is what cybersecurity is. And you know, a lot of us that have been in this industry a long time will tell you that this is the top of the mountain. We are the best of the best. The reason for this, I think, is simple. Developers need to know how code works. Network people need to know how networks work. Data people need to know how data works. Cybersecurity people need to know how everything works and how it works together. Otherwise, you don't really understand what you're doing, and you can't learn that in school. But you can get the basics. So you have to start someplace. School. So book learning plus experience gets you into cybersecurity. Next question, why are we so bad at this? So this is the heart of what I want to talk about today. Why are there still so many breaches everywhere? Ransomware, state-sponsored malware, cyber espionage, you know, basic hacking, all of that. It seems like it's so easy to do. Bad guys are everywhere doing lots of bad things. None of them, it seems like, get caught, right? It's easy to make money doing bad things. Criminals get lots of money and it seems like they can never get in trouble. That's not true. But why are there so many breaches? That's a big question to ask. And I think, you know, when we think about it, we like to say that we're doing better. You know, every year we learn a little more, we do a little bit better. Our tools are better, our processes are better, our people are better. So we should be better. But I think if you really sit and think about it, why does this all happen? Are there still lots of breaches? Well, look, business people, they blame the IT people, right? You guys have probably been a part of this. There are business people all over the place that say, hey, look, it's not our problem. The computers just got hacked, right? Something happened. We don't know. You computer people broke it. And of course, what do the security people do? They blame the business. They say, all those dumb business people, they don't understand that you're not supposed to click on every link. They don't understand that you need passwords, you know, 7,000 characters long and that change every day. They don't understand that never click on a link. So whose fault is it, really? Like, whose problem is this? Well, I think the truth is it's everybody's problem. Everybody is to blame. So really, you know, if you think about the problem, right, of why this continues, what is really going on here? And I use a lot of movie references, mostly American cinema, in my talks. And so if you recognize this movie, kudos to you. But what we've got here is a failure to communicate. This is a movie from 1967. It's called Cool Hand Luke. It's excellent. But this is the problem of communication. So let's explore this a little bit, because business people think business, right? Have you guys ever been in a group of you know, business analysts? They talk about the types of risk. How many are there? There's 6. Strategic risk, financial risk, operational risk, competitive risk, compliance risk, and reputational risk. Strategic risk is your company going in the right direction, right? If you're a retailer or you're a store that sells something, can you compete with Amazon, or will they put you out of business? Financial risk, can you pay people? Do you have enough money? Are you raising the right kind of capital? Operational risk, is your website working? Can you conduct business? Competitive risk, are there other competitors, new companies that are doing the same thing you are, but less expensive, faster, better? Compliance risk, is some compliance problem going to come in and make you stop working? And reputational risk, can you go and not be able to, will your employees, your customers, and the industry still trust you? Your investors, will they trust you? Now, I ask you, where is cybersecurity in this? And the answer is everywhere, but it's not separate. Now, IT people think about IT, right? All of you guys that are listening on this call, IT people think about 0 days and malware and patching and DDoS and vulnerabilities and nation states, hacktivism and ransomware and threat actors and AppSec, SQL injection and other kinds of things. But business people don't think that way. So can we see the problem now? It's pretty easy, right? It's very easy to understand what the problem is. Because if you guys think about what does cybersecurity look like, it's this. It's this picture right here. It's people sitting at computers, looking at screens, trying to find bad guys in log files. What does business look like? It's this. It's completely the opposite. And so the problem isn't who we are, but it is what we say, how we say it, and how we explain it. That is where the fundamental issues begin. I think what we really have a problem with is we talk in a language that is different than business. Business talks in a language that is different than IT. And for much of my career, since I started in my field in 1995, 1996, long time ago, I think we started using a different language. We started talking about, we started using phrases like, oh, those dumb users. Users don't understand. Business just doesn't understand. And that became animosity. And that means they don't trust us because they think that we think that they're stupid, so they think that we're stupid. And really, we're trying to accomplish the same thing, right? Yes, attackers are absolutely smart. Yes, attackers have money. They have probably more money than your budget. And you know what? That's not going to change anytime soon. Yes, lots of systems out there are completely insecure. They're configured wrong. They're missing patches. They're doing things that they should not be doing, but it's there. Yes, people make bad decisions. You know what? You make bad decisions too. Sometimes the people that click the most on phishing email are the security people. I promise you that is not false. Security people fall for phishing emails because they think they never will. Systems are complex. Yes, complexity is going up. It used to be database server, application server, web server, firewall, internet. That doesn't exist anymore, right? It's very rare now. You have applications and microservices, all those things, multiple data stores. So many things are going on at the same time. Yes, sensitive data is unprotected. How do we know that? Because it happens every day. Credit card data, personal information, medical data, company secrets, they're all over the internet. They're being sold, they're being ransomed. It happens every day. And you know what? No, tools don't solve your problem because this job is very difficult. This job is exceptionally difficult. It's probably the most difficult job in IT. How do I know this? I've been doing it about 25 years. And I tell you, some days it feels like this, where the plane is already flying and you're trying to make sure that the engine is the right one, that you're changing out the parts as the airplane is flying. And there's lightning and thunder and people yelling at you and saying, we got to go faster. And you're saying, yes, but this engine is on fire and I have to change it. And the pilot says, we don't have time to land, so get it going while we're doing this. And this happens every day. That's the reality, right? This happens every day. Because here's the catch. When security fails, right, bad things happen. All kinds of bad things happen when security fails. But you know what's worse? When business fails. Because when business fails, everything goes bad. I used to work for a CIO that once told me, if we get hacked and all the computers go away, I can still do business. If the business goes away, you don't get a paycheck and we all go home. Now, granted, it is 15 years later and everything is done by computer now. But you know what? As an industry, we keep saying, when that big hack comes, boy, everything's going to go change. And Sony Pictures got hacked. and Equifax got hacked, and credit card companies get hacked, and everybody, every government, every application, every user, everybody gets hacked at some point, and it doesn't change. So maybe it's time to do something different. Maybe it's time to do something a little bit different. And so I look at this and say, what should we be doing differently? What can be done differently? How do we get to better outcomes? Because what I want to not be the mouse that's running as fast as it can and going nowhere. Because for a lot of my career, a lot of my friends and colleagues, maybe even you go to work, you look at the SIM dashboard or your IDS or your EDR dashboards, they throw red errors and alerts, you go respond to them, then you make it go away and you go to the next one and the next one and the next one. And the bad guys come every day and you go to work every day and a breach comes and you go to your next job. And it's over and over and over again. So we got to do something different, you guys. And I think that something different is learn and understand risk. So that's my first ask to you. Learn to think about and understand risk differently. Here's the catch. You know, when we talked about in the US here, I don't know if you guys remember this in the news, but there was a heart monitor, okay? Something you put inside your body when your heart doesn't work right that helps you, beat your heart for you, right? And these pacemakers, these heart monitors, somebody said, they did some research and they said, well, there's no passwords to connect to them. There's no encryption. How can this be? You can't do that. That's not secure. Well, I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios here, right? Yes, ordinarily when we think about a system with no password and no encryption, we think that's terrible. However, when you think about what's inside your body, right, you know that encryption requires more battery power, more processing power. So then we think, okay, maybe if I need to change that battery more often, that means the doctor I have to go to the doctor, they have to open up my chest, they have to change the battery in that pacemaker, they have to close me back up. Well, what's the risk of somebody, getting into your pacemaker, into your heart monitor, and compromising the fact that you don't have encryption? A lot of people said it's high. Maybe the impact is high, but the likelihood is very, very low. It's never happened before outside of a lab. The risk of you dying in an open heart surgery is 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 times higher than you dying because somebody's going to hack your pacemaker using no encryption. Okay, what about the no password? I mean, come on. If you can connect to my pacemaker and make changes without a password, that has to be bad, right? Right? Maybe. But, we think about, how do we manage passwords? Who keeps that password? It can't be me, because I don't want a simple password. It's in a computer inside my body. So who keeps that password? My doctor? It is somewhere in a safe, in an escrow system someplace, right? So there's a lot of complexity to go along with it. By the way, how many people have ever been killed or attacked through a pacemaker? Let me help you. 0. Never happened. You know why? Because you have to be near somebody, because it uses RF technology. You have to be near somebody to do the attack. Okay? It's easier to use poison. It's easier to use a bullet. It's easier to use a rocket launcher to do that job. So it's risk. Being able to understand and learn the processes that we're talking about in risk. Look, security people say risk all the time. They keep using that word, but I don't think it means what they think it means, right? So security talks about risk a lot, but risk is not just a security term. So let's think about that a little bit more. The second thing I want you to think about is stop being binary, okay? What does that mean? That means yes or no, secure, not secure. Do it, don't do it. The reality is that what you want is somewhere between. Look, we tell companies, you know, a lot of the people that I've worked with that are bad security analysts will tell people, you can't do that. That's not allowed. That's insecure. The good ones will look at it and say, okay, the likelihood is very low. The impact is medium. And so the compensating control is X or this. They don't say you can't do it. They don't say yes you can or no you can't. They look at it, you know, then they look at it in shades of gray. And I love that somebody left me a comment. Dan says, "Be more afraid of dogs and sharks." I got a better one for you. Do you guys know that every year more people are killed by vending machines that sell snacks than sharks? I bet you didn't know that. But you know what? We're all afraid of sharks. Nobody walks into the lunchroom and says, holy cow, that vending machine could kill me. But every year, more people are killed by vending machines than sharks. Look it up, it's true. But this is the problem. When we work for companies, we say things like, you can't do that. That's not secure. Guys, it doesn't matter what you think. You have to make your case to the business. You have to tell them, if you do this, this is the most likely outcome. Therefore, I recommend you do this. Excuse me. Now, we need to stop saying no just as much as we need to stop being completely binary here, okay? The problem is security people have been known as the Department of No for a very long time. You know, people say, hey, I want to be able to send information from here to here using FTP. No, you can't do that. I want to be able to use my no, you can't. No simple passwords. You know what's going to happen after a while? They're going to do it anyway. If you don't give them alternatives, they will do it anyway. People don't want to do bad things. They want to do the easiest thing. They need to get their job done. Developers don't write bad code on purpose, guys. They write bad code because it's easier to go to Google, look up how to do database lookup table, copy it, paste it, and they move on. They're not trying to do bad things, but it happens. Right? So look, stop saying no. Stop say you can't do this, but maybe this is a better way. You can't just send, you know, all your information in the clear. And I know you can't do this, you know, super high quantum encryption, but maybe there's other alternatives. And I'm telling you, as your final point here, give users a better way. This is the most important. Always find a better way. They're going to do what they want to do. If it's insecure, they'll do it that way. If you say, no, you can't, I promise you, they will. And you have to find an easier way to do it. If people want to look, all of your parents and mine, okay, they don't want to remember 64-digit complex passwords that change every 5 days on 200 different websites that they have. They just don't. They will write it down or they'll use the same password. So we have to give them an easier way. Give them a better way to do this so that they do so that doing it securely is almost as easy as doing it the bad way that puts us at risk. But then we explain why that risk is bad and say, look, I know it's just a little bit harder, but this way reduces a lot of the risk and it's almost that same easy. And they will take that way. Provide ideas, provide input, provide a great way to understand and quantify and measure the risk and give better alternatives. Because remember, you are the advisor. Your job is to provide them input, to provide the business with context, with things that they don't understand. They don't live in the hacker world. They don't know about how many bits of ransomware there are, and that there are 2 million new pieces of malware every day, and that every day 10 petabytes of new malware is discovered on the internet. They don't know that. They don't even know what that means. But they do know that if they can't get this piece of data from them to their partner, that they can't do business, and then nobody gets paid and the company goes out of business. They know that part. So your job is to explain the rest. Your job is to explain why that is a problem, what the problem is, and how to do it better. And that is what I want you to take away from this. You need to analyze the problem, bring in all the data that you need. Don't just see it from the one technology perspective. Look at it from all the other perspectives. Look at it from the business risk, the financial, right? Look at it from the other perspectives. Understand what they're trying to accomplish. Make a decision on how they can do it better or faster or with less risk, and then advise them in a way that gets them to the place that you want, or almost where you want, with less friction. In other words, with less effort than it could be to do the wrong way. All right, happy to take questions. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your time, guys. Remember, sharks kill people, but vending machines kill more people than sharks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rafał, for your wonderful presentation and your vision. Right now, I share my screen. Let me share my screen. Okay. Right now, we have several comments. Jonathan said one issue is for increasing breaches must be the rapid rate of evolution of the test, like the movie reference. And then to like to learn is the degree of the risk.
I will tell you guys this while you're scrolling. Cloud computing has changed this game. When in the old world where we had infrastructure and we had servers that took a week to build and another week to configure and another week to secure, we had an opportunity to slow things down, and we had an opportunity to think a lot. Now, if your company has a credit card, you can go stand up an instance and send your company data to the cloud where anybody can access it in about a minute and a half. You no longer have control. So what that means is those of us that thought that we can control everything, and we could back then, we could stop the business from doing business. You can't anymore. You have no choice. You have to be an advisor now, or you lose.
Okay, I think there are only the comments, but no really no question. But I have one question, because from the audience, there are the audience from the university and from the companies. If the company would like to do some risk management or do some cybersecurity, what is the in summary? What can you suggest them in short that what they should do or what they should prepare?
Listen, I think to be a good cybersecurity resource in a company, and same thing for you guys that are at university. If you're going to go get a real world job and you're going to be playing defense and protecting companies from bad guys, I think you should go learn as much as you can about how security operates. Learn the tools, learn how to hack, learn all that. And then spend half of a year working in the business. So take 6 months and go work as a business analyst and understand what they go through, how they solve problems, what problems they have. Because I think until you do that, you will always see things this way, right? Like this. We see it very, very small. We don't see what's going on out here.
Right.
So when we look at, I remember very clearly one project I was on. I'll leave one story. It was a web application, and I did the group said, okay, we need you to analyze this for us. Tell us if it's good or bad. I looked at it and said, okay, this cannot go live. So many bugs. I can break this website all day long. And then they said, well, we need to release it. I said, no, you can't. I'm not going to let you do that. And then they said, okay, well, what do we need to do? And I said, okay, it's going to cost, you have to do this fix and this fix and this fix. And they said, but that's more money than the project itself, the whole project. And they said, we can't do that. And I said, well, you can't do this thing. Then they went to the CIO, to my boss's boss. And he said, okay, why are you stopping this? And I said, well, look, here's all the security problems, and people can steal data and they can manipulate the website. And he said, I don't care. It's just an advertisement. He goes, there's no data. So my problem was I didn't understand what they were trying to do. I only saw that I could hack it, right? And I saw only my part of it, and that was wrong. So always look at the other side.
Okay, so I'll just try to look at other sides. And Mr. Jonathan said security often seen as a cost, as it isn't calculated against the cost of an attack. And Alwin said great way to sell the cost of cybersecurity. And then also recommend the exercise on reading risk. Okay, do you have some book before we are closing your session?
Nope, that's it. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. And I'm going to end. If you one last thing here, if you guys like to listen to more, I have a security podcast. It's called Down the Security Rabbit Hole. I'm on iTunes. I've had Dan on. Lots of people have been on this show. It's a good place to listen and learn.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
See you next time. And the next session, Dr. Noratev will be a session share.
Okay, can you hear me? In case, no?
Yeah, please open the camera.
Yeah, am I on? No? Hello?
Not yet.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me now, right?
Clearly.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's good now. So all right. So welcome to the last session, and this one will be given a talk by Dan Hauser. He actually provides security strategy advisory and services to a lot of North American market, and he also actually give many talks and also serve as in the program committees in many international conferences, such as the RSA conference, Franklin University Cybersecurity Advisory, or Ohio National Guard Cyber Reserves. And he also helped created so many certifications, such as CISSP, ISSAP, SCI, SSPP. So today he's gonna give a talk on a topic called hacking and protecting multi-factor authentication system, which pretty much everyone has to use now, right, to have a security on the system. So also thanks again for Dan, who actually initiated this event. So without him, we would not have this event. Thanks again, and welcome, Dan Hauser.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, and can you see? Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about multi-factor authentication failure modes. You know, I was kidding with Ingy. She's a friend, and she was talking about this glorious future of digital identity, and I'm talking about the tragic present that allows us to attack an ecosystem. So why do we have multi-factor authentication? It's because passwords are terrible. But we have seen broad adoption of industry for multi-factor authentication. Facebook and Twitter, it's in banking regulations.
Dan,
yes.
Dan, do you have the camera on, or just me that I cannot see your camera?
I don't think it is doing simulcast of camera. So.
Why you want to share this look like this?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't look as though it is.
Maybe you will reshare your screen again.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's okay.
Working now?
No. I can see your share screen, but not your face, right? Your camera.
Yeah,
doesn't seem to
it's
be on for me. Or is it just me? Does anyone else can see Dan's face?
yeah.
I can see Dan's screen, but
What about camera?
But I only see you, but I don't see Dan camera.
So we will cheat and use a different camera. So.
Okay, here we go. Now we see two persons.
Okay.
Okay.
We will be flexible. So yes, we have seen broad adoption of industry of multi-factor authentication. In fact, the Singapore government moved 5 years ago to require multi-factor authentication for all interactions with the Singapore government. And I'm not a lawyer, but I think we're getting to the point where we can see that multi-factor authentication is going to be considered a reasonable standard of due care. So does it work? Well, sort of working. It works.
Sorry, Dan, I couldn't hear you.
I think he's muted. He's muted, I think. He has to unmute himself.
Hello, Dan. We couldn't hear you.
John ได้ยินเสียงไหม
Yes, now.
Do you have the link I sent you with the slides? Yeah, it's frozen. Looks like I've lost network. Can you tell the room I've lost network?
Me too, I think. Let me check. It's Singapore is okay. Here is.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all can hear me or not, but
Having problems?
Screen.
no.
Okay, ไม่จองมาเลย
Okay, more flexibility.
Wait.
Can you all hear?
Because I need to.
Not yet.
I have to change the device. Change MacBook Pro. Okay. จอมตอนนี้ภาพโอเคไหมโอเคใช่ไหมไม่นี่ใช่ไหมแม็กแล้ว
Hi, Keatron here.
Yes, we can hear from Dan camera and
Okay,
from
great. Sorry about that.
Norathep is
Oh,
frozen.
on our second mode in one presentation, so continued flexibility. But multi-factor authentication is great for some very specific use cases. You think of an ATM where you have possession of your debit card, you have knowledge of your PIN, and those are your two factors. Chip and PIN purchase. In the United States and many areas of the world, there's multi-factor authentication as well for voting. And the challenge comes when we try to extend to broad use cases and enterprise authentication models. From this very narrow use case to a broad use case adds lots of challenges. I do have a link on the screen where you can download the slides as well. So there are lots of failure modes to multi-factor authentication. And we're going to cover some of those today. There's some of these, we can't cover them all, and because there are many more. But presumption of path and over-reliance on factors is certainly part of it. And password reset, we'll talk about that at length, also a significant issue. We need to view multi-factor authentication ecosystem like an attacker. If you look at this entire display, this was from a great book. I provided a link at the bottom of the screen. You have a subject applicant who applies to be registered with an issuing authority, an identity provider. The subject then subscribes. Then they make claims, which you can see there at the upper right. They claim and say, "Hello, I'm Bob," and then Bob makes a. Is there a problem with the screen?
The screen is not.
Is that refreshing?
Yep, the screen is not refreshed.
Oh dear.
Oh, sorry then. Device setting. Share screen. Reshare again.
Share again.
Screen. Oh.
Dan, can you try to unshare your screen and share it again?
ไอ้ที่มันค้างค้างอยู่แล้ว
Because the screen is not refreshing, can you unshare it? Okay, everyone. I think there's some internet issue at the PSU. Maybe they will be disconnected and they will try to reconnect again. Please hold on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is Oak is the same campus? Oak.
I believe he's.
Yes. Actually, I'm upstairs, but I think I also have the same difficulty as well, because my screen gets frozen from time to time, and
It's your bandwidth. I think it's your network bandwidth, right? You don't have enough. Yeah.
Yes, I think it is internet issue.
Right. So let's wait a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And see how hopefully they will be able to fix it.
Yes. I think is because they're both on the campus, so maybe there's something happened with the gateway.
I think somebody's saying also MS Team. I think he's probably not MS. Maybe it's MS Team, but I think his net is the network.
Yeah. Jonathan.
Can you guys hear?
Maybe.
Yes.
It is shown on your screen WMFA ecosystem?
No. The screen sharing is still frozen at the same screen.
yeah, The screen sharing is on Dan's computer, so maybe you have to.
I already
Microsoft
left.
Teams.
Yeah, I
You
already
already left?
Teams.
But why?
Do you want me to present the slide from my side? If
Maybe he sent you the slides.
yes, I have the slide. I can share the slide, but
You can try.
We will
Okay.
play the next slide game. It's
Yes.
suboptimal, but it will work. So we can do that. Yes.
Give me 1 sec.
And we switch off all our cameras. So for the bandwidth, that's okay.
Yeah.
Is he still there?
The H is there. Yeah, you still there. That's why. You.
But it's not loaded. I mean, I don't.
Okay, then I will share my screen. Then you just
Okay.
tell me to turn the slide. Okay.
Sure.
Just give me a moment. It's not full screen. Just give me. Okay, now it's full screen. Then can you see? Can you see my slide?
I think the problem is because your account is locked in the Microsoft Teams.
Looks like Teams has frozen my account
Yeah.
as presenter.
Can you try to sign out from your account first, because now
I
think
I cannot share.
I will take him out and I can share for him.
Yeah, just kick him out. Okay. Now I can see my own screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
The solution.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So go back.
So this is the first slide. Oh, sorry.
No. That's
Maybe
several slides in.
It's not really.
Wait a minute. I think we were showing. Okay.
Then it's not here.
Are you able to start presenting?
Yes, I think now it's working. It's working.
All right. I have no idea the last thing you heard me say either. So, did you see this slide previously?
We was asked the does it work? MFA, does it work? Yes,
you read
that's one.
this slide several
Yes.
minutes for Dr. Eagle. Sorry about that. Okay, so multi-factor authentication is great for some specific use cases. For ATMs, because you have the card, you have your PIN. For chip and PIN purchase, many nations, including the United States, use multi-factor authentication for voting, and the challenge comes in when we try to extend this to broader use cases and enterprise auth models. Are we okay?
Not yet. Everyone see the MFA slide or not?
Yes, we are seeing MFA fantastic for specific use cases.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it should be fine.
Okay. All right. Where things go sideways, though, there are lots of failure modes to MFA that are caused by a number of challenges with complex infrastructure, with engineering assumptions, and start a relationship then with an issuing authority. As an applicant, they've become a subscriber, and then as a claimant, they want to log into the services to get to those protected resources. And the subject claimant then makes a claim, I'm Bob, and provides a password, or in this blue arrow case, that would indicate multi-factor authentication. If you look at this like an attacker, then you would see this entire ecosystem as all of the places you can attack. And I showed many arrows there because, in fact, the subject claimant, I am Bob, I'm no, whatever your name is, whatever the authentication session is, there are in fact many different ways into the ecosystem. And it's not just a single path. To an attacker, you would say, there are lots of places I can attack. There's the underlying infrastructure that can be exploited, all of the people and processes that are within that infrastructure, and all the servers and services within that. And that's what leads to MFA bypass. And we have to think like an attacker, we have to think about engineering for failure modes. Bruce Schneier said, only amateurs attack machines, professionals target people. So targeting people helps a lot. Paul Concher, I respect Paul, he's great. He was on the team at Netscape that launched SSL v3 and later recanted from SSL v3, and they said, you know, we missed some things, and specifically said that a lock icon is hardly much of significance when displayed by a bug-riddled browser running on a spyware-infested computer talking to a compromised web server. So if you look at that lock icon, and if, for Harry Potter fans, don't get too excited. To my knowledge, there is not actually a wizard's bank. I made this up, but that lock icon up in the upper left-hand corner, it doesn't really help much. It's from an engineering perspective, it's beautiful, but in the real world, it's been perfectly awful. I mean, if it worked, we wouldn't have phishing, because the lock icon and X.509 is to provide authentication to the user that they've reached the website they think they've reached, that they know who they're talking to. So this is authentication, which is created for engineers. They solved for X, they applied the formulas and got to the answer. And if you break apart X.509, it makes such great sense as how it's integrated within the browser. But the reality is it completely fails the grandmother test. It is horrible for usability. Engineers are great at building technical solutions, but security and authentication are human processes. So we have to step outside the pretty formulas and look at the entire ecosystem, the entire map, and people are part of that. And we have to realize that we cannot necessarily create technically sufficient solutions to human problems. One of the problems with MFA is the presumption of path. Multi-factor authentication is that hardened front door with guards, guns, walls, locks, and all the rest of that. But if you're wanting to get into a building, you go around to the back where the smokers have propped the back door open. And why attack the guards out front if they've already propped the door open around back? Because bad guys don't read your use cases. Bad guys don't follow rules. Bad guys will take the easy path in. So you have to actually armor all paths, not just armoring the happy path, the MFA path. You have to do, from a virtual perspective, a walkabout. Walk around the organization from a virtual perspective and find out all the ways in. And not all of those are electronic, because walking in the front door and talking to the security guard or calling the help desk on the phone is a great way in that attackers exploit. You have to also look at critical examination or apply some critical examination of broken factors. We'll talk about some of these at length. We already know passwords are horrible. There are lots of failure modes with biometrics. SMS has been compromised and decertified several years ago as a factor, yet still broadly used. Phone calls are readily spoofed. Email, if that worked, we wouldn't have phishing. So we have obvious trust issues there. And corporate webmail is often configured as an MFA bypass. And then security, secret questions and answers are horrible and also decertified by NIST as a factor. You have to examine the factors that you're using and understand them so that you can understand the weaknesses that they have and use the right risk assessment for determining what factors should be deployed. We'll talk about a few of these now. SMS is compromised. It was decertified by NIST in July of 2016. and is no longer suitable as an out-of-band authenticator, but yet still broadly used for pre-authentication MFA, where a PIN is sent via SMS to the phone, and then you enter the PIN in your browser, or post-auth. We saw this action, was this you? We noticed a login from a strange computer. Did you just do this? Very common. And the challenge here is using broken protocols like it didn't matter, because these lead to compromises. Webmail addresses undermine integrity as well. A friend of mine who is cryptographic practice lead at a major token vendor said so many banks will send tokens via FedEx and then permit credential reset via free webmail. The reality is that customer and employee identity is really protected by a webmail account password. If you permit account reset, password reset via email to a free webmail account, then ultimately all you're saying is, we trust that Yahoo knows who you are. So the failure mode here is pretending that the security and the identity tie of free webmail is the same as enterprise email, is the same as your ISP email who mails you a bill, and they specifically know your address. And all of these obviously are not the same. Passwords, we know passwords are terrible. It's why this talk. But is password still one of your credentials? If you are using multi-factor authentication and you're using password plus SMS as your two factors, you have two known broken authentication methods. I'm not saying there's not value there, because I think that password plus SMS is a lot better than password on its own. Don't get me wrong, but it's worth noting that you have some broken factors, and that should give pause. Are these the right factors we should have? Should we use a third factor? Should we use alternative factors? Is it time for us to move? Is this the right blend based on the risk that is in the system? I think it's important to point out too, the reason why we have passwords, because humans can't do key exchange. Human beings can't do X.509. So then system password, let's think about this system accounts. So system accounts is because a computer needs to impersonate a human impersonating a computer. Why do we have system passwords? It makes no sense, because computers can in fact do key exchange. They can do X.509. So let's kill off system passwords if we possibly can and do key exchange instead, because it makes no sense when you actually think about why we have passwords. So the focus here though is, if you have a password and SMS as your two factors, then you have two known broken factors. Question and answers are terrible. They've been killed off by NIST 863-3. It's a static question list frequently that can lead to easy hacking of answers. The worst two I've actually seen in production: favorite type of pet with a drop-down list: dog, cat, fish, bird, reptile, or other. And you can bet that guessing dog or cat would compromise most of those credentials. Or what color is the sky? Now, presuming the answers are in English, I'm stuck past blue and the two ways to spell gray. I'm not sure what other color I might possibly pick. Quite frequently, just horrible questions, horrible answers. My brother can answer most of mine. Social media contacts and friends can answer mine. Corporations tell the answers. Congratulations on 10 years of service, and yet we ask for a date of hire as a question, as though it mattered. And then there's lots of reuse of answers. And when passwords are breached or stolen, when an organization is compromised, there's an external indicator. They let you know. Nobody will tell you when answers to questions are compromised or stolen. So courts haven't ruled yet, if at least to my knowledge, I'm not a lawyer, if question and answer personal data is covered by breach notification laws. I've gotten mixed answers, but realistically, there are lots of ways to move off of questions and answers. and we did treat them different than passwords, or they get treated different as passwords as a failure mode. We should treat them the same. They're broken factors, and it also ignores open source intelligence and the fact that attackers can glean information from social media and watering holes and other sources and gain that information. So it's time for those to die. If you're still using secret questions and answers, consider moving off of those, because there are lots of reasons they just don't work. Let's talk about some of the human factor, because humans are the easiest part of this to hack of all. Let's hack them via some SMS. Smishing, I didn't make up the term. I don't know who did, but I guess SMS and phishing is smishing. So it's very easy to get the number of the big bank fraud center. You merely open a checking account at big bank and sign up for fraud detection and see what they send you as SMS. And then you can use caller ID to spoof that same exact number. And so you send a message that says, oh my goodness, a large amount of money has been, or a large purchase has been detected in a potentially fraudulent charge. Do you want to stop this? And to approve it, reply yes. To block it, reply no. And of course, oh no, don't take my money, please block it. And then, well, per your request, we'll block this transaction. So the person's like, oh, thank goodness. As soon as we validate your identity, please reply with the current PIN showing in the application. And of course, the attackers can know the name of the application, because all they have to do is sign up with Big Bank and get a one-time PIN. And the user applies, and there they have bypassed bypassed one of the factors for multi-factor auth, getting an OTP PIN. And this does actually happen. As well, too, loss of phone. Brother Orange, if you've not, you simply must spend some time going out and doing a search engine query on Brother Orange. Hilarious story of what happened with a stolen phone. But the key point is here, the phone was lost or stolen and wound up in somebody else's hand, who then became them at a certain level. Kim Kardashian, Brad Pitt, Ricky Martin have all had their phones stolen and had consequences. We saw Celebgate caused by weak pins that allowed mobile storage takeover, and then celebrity nude photos were published. This happened several times. SIM swapping, a huge fraud vector. And this allows mobile carrier account takeover. I have a hard time finding the actual total number of mobile carriers in the world. It's actually a little hard to figure out. The number's around 38,000. And most of those are driving right to the bottom line with the cheapest possible wages they can have, and aren't really focusing intently on
sorry, the sound is breaking.
I think his computer has frozen. Jacapine?
back.
Are you
Okay.
okay?
Now you are back.
Back. Oh my goodness. All right. Can you see me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we were talking about SIM swapping, right? I'm not sure how much of that you lost.
I think just SIM swapping. I think we heard you talking about SIM swapping, but you didn't finish it.
Yeah, I think most of you are aware of SIM swapping. You convince somebody at the mobile carrier that you lost your phone, and you use social engineering to bypass their controls, and you're able to enroll a new phone, and suddenly you become Kim Kardashian or Brad Pitt on your phone. And you know, there are other attacks on the human factor with shoulder surfing, with compromised endpoints, etc. The biometrics, there's some links there. I'm not going to actually play the videos. They look cool, but have many failure modes. It has that Hollywood effect, you know, the CSI or the muted lighting, and the folks that apparently can do DNA tests in about an hour or less, maybe instantaneously. They all have the cool biometrics with the eye scanners and everything, and it looks cool. But lots of bypasses. Gelatin fingerprints can be made to bypass fingerprint scanners. Michigan State University researchers broke the Samsung Galaxy S6 using conductive paper and merely printing a fingerprint out. Facial recognition, the iPhone 10 had a facial recognition failure on launch where mothers and sons were identified, and infants were able to pick up their mother's phone and unlock it. Samsung Galaxy Note 8 and Windows 10 had facial recognition fooled by photographs, and liveness tests to see where it actually asks you to move your head. You could actually use a statue or a 3D printed bust and move that in frame, and the live recognition was fooled, and you're able to then use a statue or a 3D printed bust of somebody and log in as them. And it's an entire field of fail. And it's really important to consider how you're using the biometrics and are the observed biometrics. There's a place for biometrics, but not every place. Mobile phones are actually a pretty horrible factor. Now, I realize why we do it. It's because anybody under the age of 30, their cell phone is no more than 2 meters from them at any point. And it's on the dance floor, it's in their hand constantly, they always have their phone. But as you can see from the picture, there are some real problems here. First of all, compromised networks, compromised GSM. There are carrier vulnerabilities. AT&T is a very large carrier, and if you have an AT&T phone, it will automatically connect to any Wi-Fi that's named ATT or ATT Wi-Fi or AT&T and trust it. And you are on a trusted connection, so of course, bad guys do that. Malware takeover happens, jailbroken phones, 52% of Android users don't even have a swipe lock. But if they do, I actually won a bar bet by using a smudge attack and a flashlight, and was able to unlock somebody's phone just looking at the smudges. And really it breaks down to this: the protection modes for a mobile phone rely on the human detection and enforcement of the security model on that device. And that is all in the hands of a hand user who is pretty easily fooled many times. Mobile phones are also a challenge as well too, because you have lots of different types of transactions happening on the same device. Browser and email, you have a shopping app, you have your OTP tokens, SMS. So a lot of low trust and high trust transactions come together on the same platform. But is it really actually out of band? And quite frequently, folks will consider that OTP tokens are out of band. However, is it really? If you're connecting via a mobile browser and then getting an OTP token on the same phone, that's really in band, because it's both landing on the same OS, operating on the same device, possibly compromised by malware. And attackers have, in fact, leveraged malware to steal or disrupt multi-factor auth. Some of this is interception of email, keystrokes, and SMS. The TikTok video in the upper right, I included the link on the bottom left. That's TikTok getting busted for capturing every single keystroke on iOS devices. And there's also QR code interception, where the QR code scanning by the camera, that the malware wasn't able to break the tie with the app to the camera, but it could detect when that app took a photo. And so it very quickly took a photo of its own, caused a denial of service on the phone of the application. And then it was a race condition. And that combination of that race condition with the denial of service on that app was able to then beat it in submission and be able to submit the QR code for that multi-factor auth in the hands of the bad guy. So lots of challenges then with the phone. But of all, reset is the biggest gap. I'm not going to go through all of these. Great slide out on SAP Gigya of all the different ways that password reset happens. But there are all sorts of ways to attack password reset. whether it's talking to the helpful staff, they're called the help desk. They're helpful people. You can trick them, you can fool them, and they will give you hints and tips for your password reset. I once, for a password reset, called from my desk phone, and they said, "Oh, I see you're calling from this number." I said, "Yes." And they said, "Are you Dan Hauser?" I said, "Yes." "Is your boss Bob?" "Yes." "Okay, your new password is blah, blah, blah." My answers were yes, yes, and yes. And that was a broken process. But pretty easy to exploit. All you had to do then was just be able to call in with a spoofed phone number. So password reset is a big problem. And then you have this issue of cascade failure. Bad guys have started diving into email accounts and harvesting. So the prior attacks were gain control of the email, then use the email to send things out to all of your contacts. Now it's data mining. And you dive into everybody's 7, 8, 9, 10 years of email history. You can pull out all of their banking account reset and their investment account resets, their corporate account resets, and just execute the same thing. You have control of the account, you do a password reset, lands there, boom, done and go. So personal email gets you social media reset, banking credential reset, perhaps your corporate credential reset. If they're still using question and answer, you have control of the social media. You have control of the bank, so you can answer what the last deposit was, which is a very frequent question for corporate credential reset with HR departments or being able to get in and talk to payroll. That's one of the ways they identify. And then phone carrier reset, and maybe even getting a new SIM, etc. It's a rolling field there to be able to use one credential to another, because resetting a credential always relies on another credential, and most use in-band signaling. So the failure mode here is using single factor auth as a control for multi-factor auth. So how can we armor up? First of all, you have to understand the identity proofing process, and again, no factor used in MFA should be changed with a single factor. If you've lost a factor, you'll have to find other ones to use, and frequently there are more. You have to understand all the questions that are asked and how identity is established with all channels and all methods. And bad guys will frequently call different human beings around the organization and mine the questions they get to be able to provide the answers for the others. So understanding the questions and answers that are used to establish identity when people call in and getting to minimum standards is pretty important. And then what happens if that falls back? If they can't do it for whatever reason, like, oh, I don't have my phone, I can't do this, I don't have access to my badge, I left my badge at home, I can't tell you the number on it. Do you call their manager with a three-way call? Do you visit the security desk? What's the fallback mode? Something I'll recommend, I've seen this being used by some technology companies, and now that we have, through COVID and work from home, we've been able to answer the question. Everybody has on their phone or on their laptop a video application. So the help desk person does a FaceTime chat, they do Zoom, Line, whatever it is, to establish a video session, and do a video credential reset. This is my kind wife, kind enough to be able to pose for this picture, but I did eliminate her information. And think about what you have here. You ask them to hold up a government issued photo ID, and you compare that to the picture they have on file. And you can even ask them a question of what they have on file. Like, hey, what's your manager's name? What's your mobile phone number? Hopefully you have that from the call, and et cetera. So you have the ability to see their face, the government issue ID face, and the face on file. You can compare the information, and then you ask them a random question to ensure that it's not a video replay. What is 11 times 8? And of course, the next time you don't ask what's 44 times 2, right? And this is a great system, and you can do it today. You have everything you need at your disposal to do this right now. So that's a really good system. You also should look at factors and look at all of the identity attributes you have that are used as factors. because if a OTP is via SMS is one of your factors, then knowledge of their mobile phone is essentially the factor. So if somebody can update the mobile phone on file, they have taken out the token. So any change to a identity attribute used as a factor should trigger additional security processing. I also want to talk quickly about a credential firewall. This is a notion I've been talking about for a while. I think it's time, you know, the enclave model has come into its own, and that's essentially what we're talking about here is a credential firewall that treats credentials the same way you might treat a network. That you should not have privileged user accounts typed on untrusted assets, because your admins are probably logging in actually leaking. So I think it's, did we lose the session? You guys still have me here?
Yes, I think we lost you like 2 or 3 seconds. I think you need to reshare the screen again. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so okay, we're pretty good then. So we seem to have some network issues in the building, for which I apologize. But essentially, this is the notion: is most organizations have gone to a DMZ approach of providing some segmentation. You have untrusted users and untrusted zones, and there's a firewall then to perhaps a DMZ. The workstation zone, which I still have, it's not completely trusted because people click on emails there. And a server zone, and maybe you have a management zone where management tools are, and many organizations have gone to a jump host model where from the workstation zone where your admins are working, they can go to the management zone to a jump host to get to a server zone, or to a management zone and get to the crown jewels, the mission critical data. The challenge is that they're typing that in a semi-trusted zone, or maybe even in the untrusted zone if you have Office 365 and it's the exact same credential. What I'm saying with the credential firewall is you cannot treat these as the same zones. And if any credentials are typed in untrusted, or maybe even some of these in core semi-trusted zones, that those need to be different credentials than those that are out here at the high trust credentials. That same credential should not be used all the way through. What this essentially means is you have to have a different set of credentials for that management zone, a different directory and different tools. You know, you can see so many major banks and organizations get compromised because the escalation of privilege and lateral movement is going towards an account that logs in everywhere. The patch management account, the deployment account for new software, any sort of administrative account, backup software. I believe is how JP Morgan Chase got hacked, is because the backup software talks to every server. And that's what needs to change, is whatever's talking to your normal server zone should not talk to the crown jewels. That should be on a different set of credentials. And what I told my guys in my organization was, think about that like Coke. We're not Coke. We're somebody else, right? But think about it as being a completely different company, and that's the level of trust you should have there. I think NIST 863-3 is also worth a read. It's really good. I'm not going to belabor the point, but read it. It's very solid and puts the burden on the verifier, not the user, and takes us away from a lot of bad practice, like the whole super highly complex passwords that change every 30 days stuff. That just doesn't work. That doesn't actually solve security. So in wrap up on this, how to apply this. Near term, it's time to identify the critical credentials and repositories you have, to identify the identity proofing vectors that you have for how people are actually enrolled and proving themselves, and then create a plan for getting those credentials that you have mapped and controlled. And then in the next quarter, start that plan to inventory those, find all the credentials, all the paths, and all the flows for account establish and account reset. And those tell you the vectors that need to be controlled. And then you can find out the deviancy in those for what have really rigorous controls and what have very loose controls, and how you can then normalize those via standards and scripts to get to normalization for that processing. And I think it's also important too to make sure that your authentication paths, that all of them have velocity checks and are going into a central repository looking for compromise. Because if you're not doing velocity checks and centralized logging or some sort of SIM type of check on, say, the employee Wi-Fi access point, then that access point is a path for denial of service or for an infinite number of checks relatively to be able to do password cracking. And then migrate insecure credentials. We've talked about a lot of insecure credentials. Consider migrating some of those insecure ones to secure ones. And again, I recommend 863-3 as a credential standard. And I thank you for your time. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, and I do appreciate your patience. I think we're a little over time actually, but is there time for questions or?
Yeah, I think we can do one quick question, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a question from Pirawat. So he was talking about, like in the movie, there was something like that you can, like there's an attack where the attacker can make a victim face, right, to bypass the face detection. So he asked, like, in this case, like, how does the MFA improve authentication in the real world?
Yeah. So that, I mean, you sort of can do that. Most of those, and of course, Hollywood, Hollywood frequently is not mapped to reality, but there is a sliver of truth in this, right? As I said, there is the ability to then fool liveness detection. I think that taking a lesson from Rafał and his speech, sure, just like you could also hack pacemakers, it doesn't happen very often. I think it's important to look for good liveness detection if you do have facial recognition software, and validate that and ask them how they test it, how they establish it. It's time to grill the vendors on that, and that's how I'd approach that.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I have one more question on my side, I guess, if no one else has. Actually, there's one more question. So can you give some examples of the common industries and FA implementation failure that you have seen?
Yeah, I referenced one, and it is very broad, and that is especially with work from home. We've seen Microsoft's positioning of Office 365 really hit a sweet spot, and a lot of organizations were on Teams, so I presume this organization has gone to Office 365, and so that frequently then is webmail, and if your webmail then permits login with just user ID and password, then consider how logging into a single sign-on for the company, and you use user ID and password, and then it asks for another factor, and you click corporate email, then you go to Outlook Web Access, user ID and password. That's not multi-factor auth. That's same factor twice, right? User ID password, user ID password. You fish that shoulder surf. It's probably, it's fall 2021 time again to guess, or getting into winter 2021. Users pick horrible passwords. So that is a very common failure that I see all over the place.
I see. Yeah, I guess the key here is the independence, right? Like the factors have to be independent from each other.
Yes.
Otherwise, they're kind of the same factors, right?
Exactly.
I see. Okay. I think that's all. The question is very informative indeed. Yeah. So I think I will hand over to Barodom for the closing ceremony.
Thank you, Dr. Noratev. I will share the contact point of my presentation. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone, to be here, and thank you, the speakers, then Ingy, Keatron, and Rafał. I'm also thank you, Professor Dr. Sahi, to join us our symposium, and hope to have our collaboration. And on behalf of the College of Computing, Dean of Songkhla University, my name is Assistant Professor Dr. Walodom Virapan, Associate Dean for Research and Innovation. I would like to thanks all the audience and all the speaker. And if you have more question or if any issue or would like to have some discussion, you can contact us at the screen. I'm the lead of the block research team doing the blockchain researcher, and the RMIT University as shown on the screen. And I think it's time, and thank you very much, and see you next time.